allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First of all, let me say thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy day. I know we're fast approaching the holidays, and everybody's got lots of money to spend to spur our economy, which is why we're here today on holiday gifts and Christmas gifts for their families. But this, as you can see from the turnout today, is an issue that is of great interest to all of us here, and I'm sure all the people that we represent here in the public sector, all the people that you employ from the the private sector, and so we thank you for your time today. It's really encouraging to see all of you here, this morning. I want to thank Jesse Knight, who's here with me on my right, for his leadership. I will be introducing Jesse shortly, but the partner for us this morning is the Southern California Leadership Council, which Jesse co-chairs, and has showed great leadership with us as really one of our strongest partners here at SCAG to helping try to figure out ways to improve our economy. I also want to make you aware that we are trying to enter the 21st century, and I know we've been in it for a while now, but we are working with Twitter accounts. We have a new Twitter account at SCAG News that we'd like you all to sign up for, and you can for this event today you can add the hashtag #SCAG Summit. Or I'm sorry, the number sign. So if you are going to be tweeting out while we're having this conference, and we encourage that, part of the benefit of this conference will be hoping to create some buzz about the importance of the economy. This is the third year that we've had this, a summit that has had a focus on economic issues. Obviously, the economy has suffered over the last several years coming out of a recession. And we are, unfortunately, we are the tail on the dog bringing up the rear here in California. And I don't mean that because I love my dog, and and I know there's probably a lot of dog lovers in this room, but unfortunately, with our unemployment rate being over 10, in the SCAG region being over 10%, which is almost double what it was back in 2007, we have a lot of work to do. Obviously, the importance of today, I can't stress it enough, that today is just a gathering of very important community leaders. What we do when we leave this room is going to be the critical part. We are hoping to forge a partnership with private enterprise, with labor, with the environmental community, with business, with elected officials that has not been seen before, or at least not been seen in a long time. We have an obligation to our region, to the state of California, and really, as goes California, so goes the nation in a lot of ways. We have an obligation to this country to figure out ways to really jumpstart our economy and get us rolling again. We are a leader in so many ways, but unfortunately, we are a leader in bringing up the rear of this economy, and we are going to figure out ways today, with your help, to come up with a legislative package that we hope will be able to be put in place with our legislative partners to help, again, jumpstart our economy, get people back to work, grow the economy, and grow business. As you know, we passed our RTP this year and our Sustainable Community Strategy. The important part of that is we've got a vision for investing in the future. Unfortunately, we all know in this room that the only way to invest in the future is by generating revenue, and in my opinion, through private enterprise. When we're passing sales taxes, people can only buy things if they've got jobs. We can only invest in infrastructure if tax revenues are being collected by the state of California. I'm honored to have the controller here with us today, and he's going to shed a lot of light on the state budget, on the economy from his perspective. And again, I couldn't be more honored that he's here today as a partner with us to help kind of lead the way for the state government. But if we want to do all those things that we think we can accomplish here in the RTP, in the SCS, and the economy as a whole, we really need to get private enterprise up and running. And so that's going to be a huge focus for us going forward. so that, again, we can build the infrastructure for the, for the 21st century, for, what this country, for what our state really deserves. So at this point, I want to invite our great partner here, Jesse Knight, up for some comments. The SCLC, the Southern California Leadership Council, which I've been pointed out, I speak in a lot of acronyms, and I will try to not do that today. But the Southern California Leadership Council is made up of some great leaders, including Governor Gray Davis, Governor Wilson, former Governors Deukmejian, but they also have some amazing private sector leaders, and Jesse Knight is a leader among leaders. So I want to invite Jesse up to say some words to welcome all of you and to really show you the kind of partners that we have here moving forward. So Jesse, the stage is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome on behalf of the Southern California Leadership Council, and thank you for being here today. My daytime job, I'm the chairman and chief executive officer for San Diego Gas and Electric, and it was my participation in working with LA leadership to help forge together one of the great organizations to help stimulate the economy here in Southern California. And as co-chair of the Leadership Council, along with my co-chair this year, Governor Gray Davis, we're pleased to partner with SCAG on this important summit. The Southern California Leadership Council, it's a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization formed to provide leadership on major public policies critical to economic vitality, job growth, and quality of life here in Southern California. And as was mentioned, our leadership is comprised of the former California governors, Gray Davis, Pete Wilson, and George Deukmejian, and 36 other CEOs from major companies and agencies here in our region. And although the economy is showing some improvement, clearly our state and the nation have not achieved full economic recovery. And with the issues like the fiscal cliff hanging out there and others to contend with, there is obviously a lot more to be done. Here in Southern California, we certainly need more job creation, something we'll hear a lot about today. And the fragile economy in our region could only benefit from a renewed commitment from all of us for economic development. That's the purpose of today, and leaders from business, labor, government, and elected officials coming together in one room to identify opportunities to create jobs and improve the economy is what is on the agenda today. With challenges this big, it only makes sense that all of these organizations come together and work together side by side for the betterment of Southern California. I commend to you today, if you look at today's LA Times, there's an article that's written by George Skelton where he talks about looks over the horizon about some of the things that may happen in our legislature going forward and what changes we could be facing as an economy and our political and business leadership. Also, the editorial in the LA Times today talks about changes around Prop 13. So I think that that's just the initial foray of a lot of things that we're going to see on the horizon that really does help support the notion that we all are going to have to work together, that we continue this fragile recovery that we're going through so that we can move to the next level of development and sustainability for our region. Thank you all for being here and look forward to a very good day.
Thank you, Jesse. Again, without partners like Jesse, we will not be successful. And it's his kind of leadership that is going to help us take this region and get these jobs being produced again back here in California. I want to introduce you to a person who really needs no introduction once you hear his voice. He is the voice of business in Southern California, Frank Motek. We are honored today to have Frank here with us. I could not ask for a better friend for SCAG and for business in Southern California. The accolades go on and on, but you know him for hosting the CBS all-news station KNX NewsHour. He also is the host of the top-rated Business Hour, which goes on right after the stock market closes. Frank has been in broadcast journalism for 30 years. You wouldn't know it by looking at him. And he has been one of the most amazing partners. I know when I talked to Dennis Zine earlier. When we need a partner with a radio station, KNX is there always for us. CBS Radio is there always for us, be it crime issues or business issues or just, issues that are affecting our communities. Frank is really at the top of that list, and I want to thank Frank for his service today, for leading us through some very important discussions, and just for lending his voice to a very important topic today, the economy. So, Frank, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for that generous introduction today. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you very, very much for the very warm welcome here once again. Thank you, Chairman Jesse Knight, as well, for the honor of being part of this magnificent gathering, this discussion focusing on accelerating the economic recovery at this impressive gathering of Southern California leadership in government, business, labor, along with the top economists. And I should mention also our dear friend, economist Jack Kaiser, the organizer of the first economic summit here 3 years ago, whose spirit and passion for improving and educating people about the Southern California economy lives on. This morning I was reminiscing with LA BizFed founding chair David Fleming again this morning that the Eagles have gathered here once again, just as they did when Jack was here, and Eagles don't usually flock, so when the best come together like this, it truly is a very special occasion and a tremendous privilege to be with you. Nothing like the economy to get prominent people in the room like this. Very shortly, we'll be reviewing the 2010 job recovery projections from the inaugural summit, where Jack Kaiser sat with us here and then departed the very next day after I did the last interview with him on the KNX Business Hour, during which, by the way, he said that what we have here is a serious economic crisis. As I later reported for the LA Business Journal, what Jack Kaiser accomplished with his first and what turned out to be his last Road to Economic Recovery Summit was a major service to the business community here in Southern California. Some insiders told me it took a lot out of him and might have in fact led to his untimely departure. But he went out working hard and passionately on behalf of the economy here in Southern California, just as he always did. As our dear friend Jack Kaiser now eternally soars with the Eagles, we must continue his exemplary work on behalf of all of us here in Southern California. Certainly plenty to talk about today. The fiscal cliff meets the Mayan calendar. That can't be too good. We went back to the records this morning to find out what the Mayans thought why they thought the world might end this month, and we translated the answer as Taxmageddon. So we did get that translation. And I understand President Obama and John Boehner have asked Santa for some parachutes this holiday season as the fiscal cliff approaches. Well, as we've done in the past year at this event, folks, I'll do my best to conduct the program as though we were on the air on the KNX Business Hour. It's a blank slate every day, completely news-driven, during which we talk to the movers and shakers, most relevant to the most important stories of the day. Right now, the Dow is up 10 points, NASDAQ up 14, the S&P 500 up 2. And now the weather partly cloudy today with a high up around 68, low around 52. We're showing a beautiful 61 right now here in downtown Los Angeles. We'll have updates as we go along. Very shortly, folks, we'll be hearing from the State Controller, the Honorable John Chung, SCAG's Executive Director, Hassani Krata, distinguished independent economists, and then we'll turn to you in the audience for an open discussion. First, it's a tremendous honor and privilege to introduce the state lawmakers who are here with us to absorb and take back to Sacramento the information that will be presented today. Indeed, we have Senator Curran Price, representing California's 26th State Senate District. He served as chair of the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development, the Joint Committee on the Arts, and the Select Committee on Procurement. Please welcome Senator Curran Price. We also have with us Senator Roderick Wright, representing California's 35th State Senate District. Senate, he served as chair of the Governmental Organization Committee. Senator Wright previously represented California's 48th State Assembly District from 1996 to 2002. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Roderick Wright. Also with us, Assemblymember Donald Wagner, representing California's 70th State Assembly District. Assemblymember Wagner serves as the Vice Chair of the Assembly Judiciary Committee, as a member of the Aging and Long-Term Care, Appropriations, Budget, and Education Committees. Please join me in welcoming Assemblymember Donald Wagner. Also with us, Assemblymember Stephen Bradford, representing California's 62nd State Assembly District. He serves as chair of the Assembly Utilities and Commerce Committee. Also, he serves as chair of the Select Committee on Procurement. Previously, he served on the Gardena City Council for 12 years, one of those years as Mayor Pro Tem of the city. Please join me in welcoming the Honorable Stephen Bradford. And Assemblyman Mike Morrell, serving as Vice Chair of the Committee on Labor and Employment, also on Banking and Finance. Join me in welcoming Assemblyman Mike Morrell. And I want to ask Ernie Villegas, on behalf of Assemblyman Jeff Gorell, to raise his hand and thank his boss for allowing him to participate here this morning. Ernie, thank you very much, and thank you for joining us this morning. And also would like to recognize staffer Greg Rodriguez to raise his hand here on behalf of Congressman-elect Ruiz for the 36th District. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you very much for joining us. Hope you can stay as long as possible for some very interesting information that will be presented here today. And now it's a tremendous honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce the California State Controller, John Chung, who was first elected in November of 2006 to serve as California's Chief Fiscal Officer. Controller Chung was elected to his second term in November of 2010. Previously, the Controller was elected to the Board of Equalization in 1998, where he served 2 terms, including 3 years as chair. Join me in welcoming the Honorable John Chung.
Good morning. Thank you, Frank. Let me begin by thanking Greg Pettis, my friend, for the invitation to join all of you this morning. I've been asked to share with you my particular perspective on California's budget and California's economy. I understand that there's going to be a more extensive discussion about the economy, so I will just use the economy as a framework for the context of what's happening internally within the state from a fiscal perspective. Now, of importance to all of you, and I'm not sure it's quite clear, 70% of the state budget is a subvention. So that means 70% of the state budget is used for local government. So it is critically clear that how we operate at the state level impacts all of you. Now, we just had an election, and we know the significance of this election. The voters passed a couple important tax measures. They passed Proposition 30, and they passed Proposition 39, and they have incredible importance. Now, let me reference a few data points and a sequence of time so that you have a sense. So today is December 2012. If you begin, and I'm sure the economists will talk about it, at the beginning of my term, first year, at the last month, the nation had entered into a recession. So here in our state, we were looking at an unemployment rate for the last couple of months in 2007 of 5.7 and 5.9%. 2 years ago, this state's unemployment rate was 12.5% for the last 4 months, and this last month, this state had an unemployment rate of 10.1%. So we had a loss of in excess of 1.3 million jobs in the state of California, the world's 9th largest economy, with a state domestic product that has been flat for the past few years of about $1.9 trillion. Obviously, that has significant consequences to the revenues that are collected at the state level. Personal income taxes are the largest source, sales tax second, corporate taxes are third, and so if in excess of 1.3 million people lose their jobs, we obviously have tremendous pressures. Now, prior to the recession beginning in the state of California, we actually started to witness financial problems in our state. The foreclosure crisis had begun at the beginning of 2007, or was already impacting the state. But more importantly, and something that we really need to focus on as a state, is that our state has been operating on borrowed money from a cash perspective since July 13th, 2007. That is a point of incredible weakness for the future growth and prosperity of this state. We need people of all persuasions in Sacramento, not only the elected officials, but the interests, some call them special interests, but we're all Californians, to make sure that we head California back on the right path. Now, we're heading back on a better path. We haven't completely turned the corner. I'll give you an example. One of the critical measures that we need to repair from our fiscal position is when we walked into this fiscal year, we were minus $9.6 billion with a B, minus $9.6 billion from a cash perspective. So we've been paying off our operating expenses on internal borrowables and external borrowables. And the sooner we end that practice, the better we can grow California's economy, especially since California is the lowest credit-rated state in the United States of America. The voters passed Proposition 30. Governor Brown is trying to exercise some financial discipline. The governor uses the term wall of debt. I want to provide better clarification because I think it would be instructive to all of us as we go forward if we're on the same page. I would use Ronald Reagan's phrase, tear down the wall. But we have to tear down two walls. All of you understand we have to tear down the wall of deficit. Now, people use the term deficit and debt interchangeably, and that is not correct. We have operating expenses on a yearly basis. We have to tear down our yearly deficit and then actually operate so that we have a cash surplus so that we can tear down our wall of debt. Remember, just at one perspective, cash we're owed $9.6 billion. Another perspective, we owe the education community tens of billions of dollars just to square up. We've been balancing the budget by not paying education in a large sense. And if we want to grow California's economy, and we all know the economic lessons, the skill set of the people is absolutely critical to a functioning and healthy economy, especially in a global economy where the world's GDP in the United States is now only 23%. We are going to be more heavily reliant on our ability to compete in the global economy. And that means we need to upgrade the skill set of generations of Californians. And so Proposition was instrumental and helpful in a sense, for those of you who weren't clear after all those commercials, what it was trying to do. It provided a wall, an opportunity for 7 years, basically, if Governor Brown gets elected for a second term, during Governor Brown's tenure, to try to fix California's finances. I want us all to keep in mind for the long term, we better think about what California's finances are going to look like in the 8th year. Because a loss of between $5 to $8 billion, we know the economy is going to fluctuate, and we could get back to where we were last year without that proposition. And it is an unseemly and unhealthy position to be again, to think we did all this work and we didn't position ourselves to be competitive for California's future. Now, you especially have to be careful because the impacts. You were impacted, some of you, by the decision on redevelopment agencies. A lot of you talk about your loss of economic opportunities, your economic tool. Secondly, if you go back to 2008, 2009, some of you in this room sued me because I wasn't paying you on a timely basis. You know the deferrals, right? I was in a battle with the former Department of Finance. They were trying to do the right thing. They wanted to keep California afloat as I did, but we had different discussions. How timely we were going to pay cities, how timely we were going to pay education. So there were huge battles. I wanted to continue to pay you on a monthly basis. And one time I didn't, so I got sued by over 30 counties to pay you while I was trying to keep the state from turning into Greece and defaulting on our debt obligation. We also know during that period of time that there was the possibility of a major crowding out effect. I was talking to my former boss, the state treasurer, Kathleen Brown, who was then at Goldman Sachs, about California going into the market to cover our operating issues. She said, how much did the state? I gave her a figure, and she said, John, if you did that, that's more than the capacity in today's market. And I said, how much do local jurisdictions need, right? Because I wanted to make sure that your partner, supposedly, state government, didn't borrow so much money that we would leave you at bay and in financial trouble. So the economy is improving. Glenn pointed out that we're lagging, but relative to the rest of the nation, for the last 2 quarters, we're recovering faster, but not fast enough. We know that there are incredible struggles, and there are differences when you have different types of causes for recessions, including a financial crisis, so this is a little bit slower. But one of the things that we have to learn after 2008 and 2009 is that we need to be much better in planning for risk. We didn't plan for a national financial crisis. Plans, including pension plans, healthcare plans, local jurisdictions, were all severely impacted, and we're trying to grow out of those problems. So things that we need to keep aware of and pay close attention to the economists as they discuss this is the fiscal cliff. Now, the state might get a short and small windfall because of the fiscal cliff right now, because people are selling some of their stocks in fear of an increase of higher tax rates, so that we may get more capital gains for this month. But don't look at that one blip as a long-term trend. We're going to have to follow it very closely, because the impact of the fiscal cliff will not all hit us with one sudden whack. It will take a period of time, so we have to pay very close attention for the foreseeable future. And the fiscal cliff is not a single action. It happens over months. So let's track what happens with the fiscal cliff. Number two point of risk we have to pay attention, our state's second largest trading partner is in recession. Our largest trading partner is Mexico, and they're actually doing well. But the second largest trading partner is the Eurozone. And we understand a lot of them have significant default issues. They have economic issues. They have financial sustainability issues. And so we're going to have to pay close attention in terms of economic growth from a trade perspective. Number three, we got to look at Japan. They're the world's third largest economy, and they're struggling. Look at the emerging nations. They're starting to slow down. And then who knows what's going to happen with the Middle East or some other disaster. So those are the things that we have to pay close attention to. And imagine, that's just not a short window. That's a window provided by these 7 years. I don't see, well, I can't predict, and I'm not sure anybody can predict what's going to happen in the next 7 years. So what's quite clear is we need the legislature and governor to fix not only the deficit, but also to fix the debt. And if they have good, sustainable budgets, the government will do their part to create the jobs that we need here in California. Let me give you one example, because some of you are impacted, and I still see Will, who provided great leadership in the transportation sector here in California. One of the 82 boards that I sit on is the Pooled Money Investment Authority, with the governor's representative and the state treasurer. For those of you who are not familiar with the Pooled Money Investment Authority, we provide AB 55 loans. Those are the infrastructure temporary loans to start projects. Every $1 billion in infrastructure loans in the state of California creates 16,000 to 18,000 jobs. In the cash crisis of 2008, where we had $6 billion remaining in the state treasury, the aggregate request for loans was $6 billion. It would have wiped out all the cash we had available in state government. So we shut down financing for those 5,300 requests for infrastructure loans, creating massive job loss potential in the state of California. We have not restarted the financing of those infrastructure loans. So if we can get the legislature and governor to continue on its tack and build cash surpluses, we will have money available for those infrastructure projects to help restart economic growth and job creation in the state of California. Now, what's absolutely critical is your participation. The last point I want to make before a different point of another note is that all of us are going to have to come together. You, on the ground level, understand the impact and the devastation of the antiquity of our financing structure and tax structure here in the state of California. We have a tax code created in the 1920s and 1930s. There's no clarity. We have a financing structure that gets more wrinkled every time California enters into an economic recession. And so the lines and the responsibilities and the fund flows are not clear to 99% of the people. And then we have public policy issues put on the ballot, sometimes ending in good results, sometimes not ending in good results, because people are uncertain what we should do. Now, we just had a major decision that had $1 billion impact to the state budget. I think it was decided correctly. But here's the point I want to make. The voters just passed Proposition 39. Let me ask you to raise your hand. How many of you understand what Proposition 39 did? Raise your hand. Gary? Okay, so about less than 5% of you, Rod, right? I'm glad Rod did. Don, I'm sure, Don, you understood it. They better understand it. So less than 5% on a billion-dollar issue that impacts all the state of California. Why I think all of us need to get together, Proposition 39 did this. It changed the corporate tax apportionment methodology. Now, Billy had to work for Governor Schwarzenegger in a much more difficult budget situation where it used to require a 2/3 vote to pass a budget. So basically, we would be held to the whims of a couple legislators for the state of California to move forward, and oftentimes we didn't have deliberative, thoughtful public policy take place. Basically, it was a political trade-off so that we could get the budget completed. One of the things we want to do is, with Proposition 39, and we want multinational corporations, but we have to understand the balance, is that we created that corporate tax apportionment methodology decades ago when California didn't have the same economic prowess relative to the rest of the world. Today, up until recently, we would generate a lot of international jobs internally, and we want to create those jobs. That tax methodology encouraged corporations to hire people and to locate their offices outside of the state of California. That's the last thing we need to grow our economy. Now, I would have done things differently than what had happened, because I didn't want it to have to go to a ballot where other people would decide what to do. Because I also want a competitive tax structure to keep small and large-sized businesses in our state, so those monies flow into the state coffers and to local coffers, including yours, so that we can grow our economy. But because we couldn't get action, final action by the legislature, it went to the legislature. These are things that we need to come together to devise a competitive 21st century tax and financing structure. We cannot continue to piecemeal taking away your local revenue sources as devised, and we need to make sure that we don't have difficult budget situations where we do things such as redevelopment agencies without you having the ability to participate. The good thing is always about California that we start off in a position with the most educated workforce, the wealthiest nation, and then I have great faith and trust in all of you to provide the leadership, because that's all that is lacking, right? If you just credit analysis of California, it's not our economic prowess. They look to our political leadership, and the political leadership resides within each and every single one of us to make that difference. So Glenn, I want to thank you for this opportunity to join with you. I certainly want to work with all of you to make sure that we get California headed in the right direction. Because last statistic I'm going to offer, over the last decade, we only created net 27,000 new jobs in California. We all know that we can do much better than that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Controller Chung. And he did say he serves on, you heard right, 82 boards. 82 boards. I think that's 20 more than the last time we met at one of these functions also. So that's a very impressive record there. Well, thank you very much, Controller Chung. And when you mentioned that hardly anybody knows about Prop 39, on September 12th of this year, former President George W. Bush spoke at the ACG conference in Beverly Hills, and we had the chance to hear what he had to say about not only 9/11, of course, but also about his handling of the financial crisis, which he said he details in his book, Decision Points, which he jokingly said nobody has read. And anyway, he did say that when Paulson and Bernanke came to him, they said, Mr. President, we have a problem with the TED spread. And he said he didn't know what that was, and most of the people in the audience of business people didn't know what that was either. But the TED spread is some measure of liquidity in the banking system, and he said the decision that he had to make based on Bernanke's and Paulson's recommendations was depression or no depression, and he had to trust his leaders in place to make that determination. So that's how that played out. It was very interesting to hear it directly from him. Let's hear from another lawmaker here right now, Senator Roderick Wright, representing California's 35th State Senate District. And Senator Wright, please step forward and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here from Sacramento today.
Thank you so much. What it doesn't say in my bio is that I'm absolutely insane, but apart from that, I believe right now that we in California are in a bit of a crisis. I'm going to take, I hope, a little bit more than my 2 minutes as a former SCAG employee that I am. We're at a bit of a crossroads, and the crossroads where we are is to decide what we want to be. One of the things that we've been doing for the last 30 years here in California is espousing the idea that we want jobs and then advancing policies that are antithetical to the jobs we said we want to create. See, I grew up in Southern California, and we used to make 25% of all the passenger car tires in the United States. Now we make none. At one point, every jetliner that landed in the world, one of 3 of those was made in Southern California. Today, the answer is none. We used to make every Camaro and Firebird manufactured in the world. Today, cars, we make none. And I could go on. There's a place up north called Silicon Valley, so named because that's where the silicon chip came from. Guess how many chips they make today? None. So in South Central Los Angeles, where I grew up, the description of that would be that we're hustling backwards, because we're putting forth policies that run against the very industries that we say we like. I voted against Proposition 39. It's not as much a point of whether or not you like it or don't like it. The problem is that if the legislature can one day pass something, and if you as a business person act on that because you believe that it made good sense, and then 2 years later it can be taken away, then that suggests that you're in a banana republic. And if you're going to be in a banana republic, the question is, do you want to invest in a banana republic? And most people in business would say, hell no. We've got to understand something that those of us in this room don't like to come to grips with. We don't make jobs in government. We provide services, and we provide infrastructure to other people who make jobs. When we begin talking about jobs, we're actually working against ourselves. We don't make a damn thing, but we provide service. And it's important that we do, because when you don't have the services that we provide, go to the people who live in New Jersey and New York, and you'll find out what government does. So it's not a question of saying, is there a need for government? There absolutely is. The challenge is that when we make jobs, it doesn't go right. Now, in South Central, we have an expression. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. Now, y'all have to tell some white folks what I just said, but the challenge becomes this. If you're making a policy and you can't show how it's going to provide the benefit to people who are going to risk capital, then that policy doesn't make sense. I'll tell you a secret. I did a bill last year that was a huge fight. My bill said that the 120 agencies in California who put forth regulations every year can only do it 4 times a year. We had agencies that put forth regulations every damn day. So you could look up today and the regulations change and you don't know what the hell's going on, because these agencies could just do that. We're in a situation now where there's actually a 4th branch of government. It's called regulators. I don't know how many of you ever voted for Mary Nichols, but Mary Nichols right now got more power than anybody in the state of California. She just passed a multi-billion-dollar levy, and it's going to come out of what? Everybody here's pocket. Because see, you have to remember something else that I learned when I got old. Everybody can be a Christian as long as somebody else is carrying the cross. The challenge then that we face is we have to decide what we want. If what we want to be is high tech, if what we want to be is the place where conventions come, if what we want to do is provide nice restaurants, if what we want to do is engage tourism, then we need to tell 20 million people to get the hell out of California, because you won't have a job or a house. Now, that's a hard nut to crack, but it's real, because what you can't do is continue to squeeze business out and then cry because you ain't got no money. We passed Prop 39, and guess what? International papers said, adios, California, I'm out of here. First, they said, I'm going to do 100 jobs out of California, and then they took the rest of them out. Campbell Soup said, hey, y'all can have this. Comcast said, hey, y'all can have this, and this is just in the last 90 days. Look at your brochure. We lost 600 and something thousand manufacturing jobs. That's not a sustainable business model, because what we do is schizophrenic. Right now, I'll tell you another story, and I'm going to get out of the way because they're going to give me the hook. But I'll tell you another story. We want to be a tourist destination, but this is the last place in the world that airplanes want to land. Try to get here on a nonstop from Europe. You'll find it difficult because the gas and landing fees cost too much. So you have planes that do what's called tankering. What does that mean? You route your planes in such a way so that you buy as little fuel as possible in California. We have a port in my district. I represent the port of San Pedro. We have trucks that now have expanded their gas tanks. Guess why? Because when they drive into California, they don't buy no gas. The loss in sales tax between airplanes and trucks is damn near $1 billion in lost sales tax revenue, because people say, hell, I ain't going to buy it there. So we've got to come to grips and say to ourselves, what do we want to be? We're going to have to look at some of the regulations that we put forth, and we're going to have to look at how we make changes on the fly. You can't do business if you don't know what it's going to cost you next year. You can't operate if the regulations are going to change next year. If it takes me 8 years to build a power plant in California, and it takes me 60 days to build one in most other states in the country, guess where you're going to have the lowest electricity bills? Ours are too damn high. Anyone who's using electricity as a function of what they do. I went to the guy at the NUMMI plant when they were getting ready to leave. It was a Toyota operation. They said, right, I can make this car for $400 a car cheaper in San Antonio, Texas. Tell me why I should stay here. Those become the challenges that we have. It's not enough to say how we're going to get business and what we're going to do, and oh, woe is me, and we're going to create some business out of government. That's not what y'all do, and I'll leave you with this thought and get out the way. Again, I told y'all I was crazy. Government exists on the VIG. Now, y'all don't know what that is, so the old people will know. But in the gambling business, I chair the Committee on Government Organization. In the gambling business, when you place a bet with a bookie, the bookie gets a piece of the action. VIG is short for vigorese, and it just means the percentage that the bookie takes off the deal. They call it the VIG, we call it taxes. Same difference. You get a piece of the action from someone else's transaction. If there ain't no transaction, there ain't no VIG. That's your challenge, is to make sure that what you do, whether it's at the local, state, or federal government, does not interfere with the transaction. Because if you do, there ain't no VIG. And if there ain't no VIG, then it doesn't matter all the policies and stuff that you make up. We've got to decide, do we want to make stuff? If we do, then there's some policies we have to set forth. Part of that will be that you have to have a standard thing that moves forward so that you know from day to day or from year to year what your costs are going to be. If you have no idea what your costs are going to be, you can't plan business. That doesn't work. In my district, I saw the Space Shuttle Endeavour come through. It was a joyous moment. I serve on the Science Center board. And when I watched that baby move down Manchester, I said, oh my God, this is such a beautiful idea. And people said, oh, they're going to bring the Endeavour to Los Angeles. I said, no. They're bringing it back. The Endeavour started in Inglewood, where Marvin Engineering made the undergird that made it work. And then it moved to Downey, where Rockwell made the parts that assembled it. Then it went to Palmdale, where it was assembled. And then it flew out on a Boeing 747, where the fuselage was made by Northrop Grumman in Hawthorne, California. No, we didn't bring the Endeavour to California. We simply brought our baby home. We have to decide in the future whether or not we're going to have more Endeavors, or whether or not we simply want to watch as everybody takes their business someplace else. Thank you so much.
Senator, thank you very much for laying it on thick. I'd like to also hear now from Assemblyman Mike Morrell, serving as Vice Chair of the Committee on Labor and Employment, also on Banking and Finance from Sacramento. Thank you very much.
Well, it's good to be here, and just a couple of things about Senator Rod. I think he needs a little bit more passion, don't you? He sort of, anyway, that was a good speech. I was going to say the very same thing, guys, but he stole it from me. So we do have some challenges, and I won't take that much time, but, you know, we also have a lot going for us. You have it on your book that I brought up here. You know, we have some of the best seaports in the world for trade, deep water seaports. We have the Silicon Valley, which leads the world in technology. And, of course, over the hill from there, we have the San Joaquin Valley, which produces over $38 billion a year in agriculture revenue. So sort of makes you wonder, with all this going for us, how could we've fallen so far behind? And I think a lot of it is some of the policies that happen up in Sacramento. It was mentioned earlier today, we have the lowest credit rating in America. The top 500 CEOs in America has rated California as being the most challenging place to do business. But one thing that does concern me, a few months back there was an article in the Wall Street Journal, and they asked the top governors, or some of the governors from around America, what is your economic recovery strategy for your respective states? And their answer was, we're going to go to California and rate it if it's jobs and the economy, because we do a lot of over-regulation. And so I think that and we tax a lot. So I think the solutions are there. Is one of the things you mentioned in your book that you've accomplished is being business-friendly. We have to continue to do that, I think, to lure the businesses back here and treat them right and help them in any way we can. Second, too, is I am a strong fan of returning power and money as good as we can, as much as we can, back to the local municipalities. I've come to believe that the people, whether it's where Bill's from in Big Bear, or Greg in San Bernardino, or you know, people from Orange County, are just as capable and smart of managing our money than the people up in Sacramento. And so any way we can accommodate that, I want to be part of that. And then, of course, one other thing, too, or two other things, I think, and that is I think people in Sacramento forget that economic fundamentals work the same for states as nations as well as they do for individuals. And you really can't raise debt ceilings or ball your way out. You know, we do have to go back to those economic fundamentals. And if, as we recall, our Declaration of Independence says that we're governed by consent. And so Senator Wright talked about the fourth branch of government. I have my fourth branch of government, and that is the will of the people. And at one time in America, you know, citizens, after coming out of 5,000 or 6,000 years of despotism, were very serious about their liberties and fighting for their freedoms. And so just, you know, in California we have 719,000 small business owners, and they average about 20 to 25 employees. I think we need to engage those folks. We need to work with them and help them to get before some of their local legislators up in Sacramento and remind them, hey, if we leave, you guys are gone, because California is bleeding jobs as well as middle and middle-class people. Young people are heading to other states for opportunity, and that's not good, because California still, I'm here to stay in the fight. I was born and raised here. I'm not going anyplace, and I am planning on trying to restore our state back to not the 9th largest economy, but just a few years ago it was 5th, if you remember. So we are sliding. I don't like that. I love our state. And I do believe, as our MC here said today, truly what does happen in California, as California goes, so goes the nation. So we have a lot of work to do. You guys are really have to lay the infrastructure. So you've got a big job ahead of you. In any way that I can be of service to you, I'm here to help you. Even if you're not in my district, I want to be part of the solution. So with that, thank you for your time.
I'd like to now call upon Assemblymember Donald Wagner, representing California's 70th State Assembly District.
All I can say is I'm glad I don't have to follow Senator Wright. It's unusual for Mike Morrell and I to be at a function where the Republican state legislators outnumber the Democrat state legislators, I would like to call for the vote now. But in truth, if we all sounded like Senator Wright up in Sacramento, this state would be humming. And the trick is to get us all back there where the state is indeed humming. I want to pick up on just a couple of things that have been mentioned before and close in a moment asking you for your help with a very specific task. But we've heard about unemployment, and why that is such a critical issue is that in our state, we are enormously dependent, as probably most of you know, for our budget on employment taxes. It's very top-heavy, and when unemployment goes up, when unemployment suffers, then our budget takes a disproportionate hit. And so focusing on unemployment, getting people back to work, is not just good for them. Allowing people to provide for themselves and their families, allowing businesses to grow, allowing entrepreneurs to realize and build their dreams. That is not just good for a vibrant community, but it has a bottom line impact on California. And it's something we absolutely must, in the coming session of the legislature, focus upon. There are a couple of things we can do to help grow this economy that we have tried before and we have found them to be successful, and they've been bipartisan. I'll give you just a couple of quick examples. In the last session, we passed tax credits for the film industry. We love the film industry. It got started here. It grew here. It is one of our signature industries. It is a wonderful industry. We need to encourage more filming and more production work in California, so we passed tax credits. And I voted for them. Mike Morrell voted for them. We do find ourselves sometimes subject to the question, well, why are you favoring one industry? Why are you picking winners and losers? And here's why. If a bipartisan legislature can come together and say tax credits work in that one industry, I think they've just given up the game. They recognize that is a tool the legislature can use. So now I'll ask the next question. We like the film industry, but we'd like to build more space shuttles if indeed we were ever to build a space shuttle. We'd like to encourage the aerospace industry. We'd like to encourage the computer industry. We'd like to encourage, you name the industry. Let's use that tool that you now in the legislature have admitted works for one industry to grow jobs throughout the state of California. We passed a CEQA exemption. Actually, it wasn't quite an exemption. We streamlined the process for one project in LA. I voted for it. Why? Yes, we're picking winners and losers here. But a bipartisan group of legislators said there's a problem with CEQA, and we're going to fix it for one project. All right. The next question is, why don't you fix it for the next project? Why don't you fix it for all the projects in the state of California? Why don't you fix it so that other people can build, other people can develop, other people can put their fellow citizens to work? That's the sort of thing we need to do on a bipartisan basis. There are enterprise zones. The governor has targeted them, and he's changed the rules. Well, I won't go into it. Senator Wright explained exactly why. You can't change the rules every other month. Pretty soon, the productive folks say, I'm not going to be there. When you change the rules next time and I don't know how to effectively run my business, I don't know how to put people to work, I'm going to go somewhere else. We've got to stop. We've got to stop that. We've got to provide certainty. Otherwise, well, the phrase was banana republic, and that might well be the direction we're going. So there are tools available to the legislature, and here's what I'd like from you folks. As legislators, we have a million things going on during the day. And if you're bored in one meeting, wait 15 minutes because somebody with another problem, somebody who's thought deeply about another issue is going to walk in your door, and there's going to be something else to talk about. That's because the state is so big, it is so diverse, it does so much. All right. We cannot possibly be experts on everything. But you folks are out in the communities. You folks represent various different groups that have narrower focuses, have thought about the problems deeper and longer than we ever possibly could. Bring to us ideas. Tell me, you know, if the legislature stops doing this, I can put one more person to work. I can put 2 or 3 more people to work. I can recapitalize some equipment, whatever it is, in whatever industry. Bring us the ideas, because you know your businesses and you know your industries a whole lot better than we do. We are itching for these ideas that'll help people put people back to work. That's how we fix the state of California. I'm going to be here a little while. I want to hear what all of you have to say, but please don't be strangers. See me, see Mike, see Senator Wright. Come on up and talk to us. We need your help. We need to put people back to work. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you all.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and pleasure to welcome to the podium now Hassan Ikrana, the Executive Director of SCAG, to introduce and describe the accomplishments that occurred since the summit last year, as well as introduce the independent economists who will be making presentations. Hassan Ikrana.
Thank you, Frank, and good morning to all of you. Thank you for being here. I just want to introduce the excellent talent that put the economic report together. But before we do that, let me just remind you of a couple of things that especially our legislators need to know about Southern California. About a few months ago in this room, the Regional Council with no objection adopted the Regional Transportation Plan Sustainable Community Strategy. As far as I'm concerned, as far as you're concerned, that was an important day to set the vision for the future in this great region. While we're seeing some good news, we still have a lot of work to do. And I appreciate the partnership with Southern California Leadership Council. I appreciate the partnership with the business community. I think that only through this partnership we can accomplish what we need to accomplish. But just to highlight a few statistics before we introduce the economists. Almost 90% of the jobs created between 2000 and 2007 were created in Southern California. Unfortunately, 65% of the jobs lost since 2007 were lost in Southern California. Oops. You know, it's not a competition between North and South, but it is important to understand what Southern California needs to do to actually get the jobs that we need. This is compares the SCAG region to the Bay Area. 28.4% of our kids have bachelor's degrees, 42% in Northern California. That speaks volumes about the kind of work we need to do to bring the educational level up. Median household income, $59,876 in Southern California, $72,475 in Northern California. So we're different. We have a lot of work to do. And it's not enough just to talk about it. But I would like, hopefully, while I'm still having this job, in a couple of years to show statistics that are different than this. We have done a lot since we started talking about this in 2010. We have partnered. We have worked with our legislators. We have talked to our cities. 171 of our cities passed a friendly for business resolutions. We want to do more. And we want you to do more, and we want to partner more. Today we have an excellent talent to present to you the economic situation in Southern California, and I think you will find it very interesting. I'd like to introduce them. From Imperial County, we have Michael Brandon, Development Management Corporation. From Los Angeles County, Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation, Christine Cooper, Dr. Christine Cooper. Leading this effort from Orange County, Dr. Wallace Warrard, from Orange County Business Council, from representing Riverside and San Bernardino County, Dr. Jan Husing, and representing Ventura County, Bill Watkins. So, yes. These individuals, led by Dr. Wallace Warren, are independent. They don't really listen to anybody, even if you try to tell them something. And what they're going to tell you today, they're going to call it the way it is. Some of it is good news and some of it is not so good news. But listen carefully to what they're going to say. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Wallace Warren to do the presentation of the economists. Oh, you go for it.
Thank you, Hassan. It's good morning to everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here today. I'm really excited to talk about the work that our team has been conducting over the last several months. First of all, let's bring the slides back up. As you heard, back in December of 2010 at the first Economic Summit, the effort at that time led by the late Jack Kaiser had the economic team estimate, sort of in the depths of the recession, when recovery would occur. During that time, we conducted extensive research, interviewed hundreds of business leaders throughout Southern California, and took our best guess as to the best and worst case scenario by county when we would reach that previous employment level. And you can see the results there from back in 2010, just to remind you. By county, we projected best case and worst case. Imperial County, 2013 to 2015. Los Angeles County, 2016 to 2018. Orange County, 2014 to 2016. Inland Empire, Riverside and San Bernardino, 2015 to 2016. And finally, Ventura County, 2015 to 2016 as well. Well, we've gone back and relooked at that exact same question. And in general, while much progress has been made in terms of job creation, especially in the last year, and economic recovery is on a steady path in some parts of the SCAG region, other areas are experiencing slow, uneven recoveries with job growth occurring in fits and starts. And we'll talk at length, I think, about this. So first of all, looking at the unemployment levels at the nation, state, and SCAG region, and we took December of 2007, that's sort of when the recession started. December of 2010, that was when the first economic summit occurred. And the latest numbers that we had before today, which was October 2012. And as you can see, the United States, and I do want to say first off that in order to compare apples to apples, we are using non-seasonally adjusted numbers, which is technical talk for us economist folk, but we wanted to make sure that we're apples to apples with these numbers to the numbers we're using at the county level. So entering the Great Recession, California was a percent above the national unemployment rate. As you can see, in 2010, the first economic summit, the margin had increased up to 3%, and we entered this recession earlier and were hit harder in large part because of the collapse of the housing market and the subprime market. Right now, California is down to 9.8%, so we've closed the gap a little bit from that 3%. We're only 2.3% above the national average now. But that still means we're 48th out of 50 states in terms of our unemployment rate. In other words, we have the third highest unemployment rate in the nation. In SCAG's region, we entered this recession at 5.5%. We were at equal with the state in December of 2010 at 12.1%. And actually our a little bit slower recovery as a region-wide right now, October 2012 at 10.1%. That still means, so we're sort of mirroring California's slow recovery. That means that we still have 886,000 unemployed folks here in the SCAG region, way too much by anybody's measure. Now I think we want to dig in deeper and give you a little overlook and the highlights by county. So in Orange County, my home, economic recovery actually did pick up steam in 2012. Our unemployment rate fell to 7.2% in October, and it has been a really broad-based recovery. We've created about 35,000 private sector jobs so far in 2012, broad-based across a number of industry clusters, including construction, trade, financial services, business and professional services, health services, and leisure and hospitality. They all have contributed greatly to the positive job growth trends. And I really want to point out two of those, two of the hardest hit sectors during the downturn, financial services and construction, who actually saw very positive job growth. So two industries that were just really knocked flat by the recession are starting to come back in Orange County. And also a very encouraging sign is that we really see the housing market in Orange County starting to show real signs of strength. So now I want to turn it over to my colleagues to talk about the other counties. First off, Dr. Christine Cooper from LAEDC.
Good morning. So Los Angeles County actually reached its peak employment before the recession was formally called in June of 2007 with 4.14 million jobs and an unemployment rate of 4.9%, so it was doing pretty good. However, the trough in January 2010, by then we'd had an overall job loss of 400,000 jobs. Almost a quarter of all jobs lost in California occurred in Los Angeles County. So to put it in perspective, about 10% of our jobs just simply vanished during that time. So the unemployment rate, of course, has been continuing to rise in 2010, and it reached a peak of 13.4%, so that was pretty significant. Since then, the recovery in the employment has been halting at best, with 106,000 jobs added since mid-2009. At this rate of recovery, we don't expect employment levels to retain peak levels until well into 2020. If we improve it with a faster rate, we could be a little bit earlier, but still, it's going to take a little while. In addition to that, increases in the labor force are going to continue, meaning that the unemployment rate is not going to see 4.9% for quite a while. So the key industry sectors, which we expect will add the most jobs, include healthcare, leisure and hospitality, professional and business services, finance and insurance, and the information sector, which includes our motion picture industry. Manufacturing will continue to shed jobs as efficiency gains, cost competitiveness, as you know, and labor substitution pressures weigh on the employment potential in these industries. In terms of export-oriented industries, trade and logistics continues to dominate, but in LA County, at least employment gains will be moderated by efficiency gains and by the geographic relocation of the growth of this industry into inland areas. The entertainment industry cluster, which is a major source of regional exports for us, will continue to face both opportunities as new forms of delivery are developed and as synergies between motion pictures, video gaming, and online content are realized. But it also faces challenges, of course, as digital delivery enables heightened global competition and domestic competition. Nevertheless, we still see hope in our competitive strength industries: trade, entertainment, aerospace and analytical instruments, education, and our creative industries, including fashion, digital media, and industrial design. Still, we face continuing challenges, and our work is cut out for us, as you all know. We consider 5 overarching goals for our region. First is to build the 21st century infrastructure, which of course we're doing here, which forms a framework of a successful economy. This needs both investment and implementation. Second is preparing an educated workforce. This requires improvement in educational achievement levels for all Los Angeles County residents, where almost half have only a high school or do not have a high school level educational achievement. We need smart and appropriate land use policies to protect our jobs producing land base. We need to continue encouraging a business-friendly environment to more adequately enable the private sector to provide these needed jobs. And we need to ensure a great quality of life, which will continue to draw more new generations, vibrant people to improve our prosperity here.
Unfortunately, John Husing, who did the work in the Inland Empire, could not be here today, so Mike Bracken is going to cover Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and Imperial County.
Well, good morning, and thank you for having me here. Let's start with the Inland Empire, San Bernardino and Riverside County. First, unfortunately, the Inland Empire does continue to have the highest unemployment rate of any MSA with a population of 1 million persons or more. Although thankfully there seems to be a slow recovery in place. One of the problems the Inland Empire has had is 58%, so 6 in 10 of the jobs that were lost in the downturn were directly tied to the construction industry. We are seeing home sales slowly come back. The demand for existing homes are back to 1998 levels, which doesn't sound great, but it certainly is better than 1991 and 1992 levels. New construction is going to continue to be challenged until the price gap between new homes and existing homes compresses a little bit more. And once we get that gap compressed, maybe by another 15–20%, we should start seeing some new home construction. A couple bright spots in the Inland Empire economy as a whole to discuss. One is relative to logistics, which got hit hard in 2008 to 2010. We are in our 14th or 15th month now of increased jobs in logistics. The second bright spot is relative to healthcare services, where, quite frankly, there was no decline. This could be, quite frankly, because of the baby boomer syndrome, so to speak, where you have additional folks that are looking for healthcare services and residential retirement services. So healthcare never did see a decline, even in the downturn, and is also adding jobs. As those of you who represent those regions know, the more rural areas within San Bernardino County, also known as the High Desert, and the eastern Coachella Valley region are starting to see a number of solar and wind projects come under construction, which is helping add some construction jobs back. The recovery overall appears to be slow, but gaining a little bit of steam. The biggest problem, of course, in the Inland Empire is still going to be the housing crisis. 50% of the homeowners still have negative equity. One final bright spot for the Inland Empire, and those of you from the Coachella Valley know this, is relative to tourism, leisure, convention, corporate travel appears to be on the rise. Coachella Valley is seeing a record use of their airport, Palm Springs International. Hotel occupancy is on the rise, as well as room rates. And as a Coachella Valley resident, we thank Hassan and SCAG because you're going to return your General Assembly to the Coachella Valley next year, which will further that. So. Perfect. Let's go into Imperial County. Ralph Cordova in Imperial County, I hope you're in the room. Your economy has technically recovered. Do you feel like it's recovered? Here's the problem in a statistical anomaly. Unlike any other region that we study, and we study regions like many of my colleagues all over the U.S. and sometimes internationally, Imperial Valley today, Imperial County, has as many jobs as they did in 2007. Let me say that again. They have as many jobs. Ralph's walking back in the room. Ralph, do you feel like your economy's recovered? Here's the problem, and this is an interesting anomaly. Do you realize from 2007 to 2010, their labor force increased by 20%? Whose region's labor force increased by 20%? So we've had to dig a little deeper, and what we've kind of determined is this, and all of you now get to really help Ralph's economy recover. The Imperial County is a border region with Mexicali. The Mexicali Valley has approximately 1.1 million residents. There are quite a few of those residents that are working or were working in the traditional Southern California economy. When they lost their jobs in various sectors, they moved home. And as they're re-entering the labor force, either for benefits or to look for job training skills and whatnot and come back into the labor force, they're doing it in Imperial County. So that's why their unemployment rate hasn't come down at all, yet they have the same number of jobs. In terms of the housing crisis, the worst appears to be over. Foreclosures and defaults have fallen 75% from their peak. The region did experience in 2011 their largest agriculture crop. $1.9 billion of crops came out of Imperial County. So when you're served your salad today, look up at Ralph and Jack, and I know John was sitting there as well, and thank them, because that lettuce had to come from somewhere, and it certainly didn't come from downtown Los Angeles. And if you have a glass of milk with your lunch, understand the hay for the cows that created the milk was also probably grown in the Imperial Valley. In 2012, we were on track to hit that $2 billion number, which is something everybody in the Imperial Valley's had their eye on for a long time. The problem is this: while little storms in the late summer might not mean a lot to you folks, a storm that comes through the last week of August, first week of September in the Imperial Valley is devastating for crop production. That did happen this year. We don't know the full impact. We will know probably by February as crops are harvested. Finally, the region, namely the County of Imperial, has approved over 15 new solar, wind, and geothermal projects. Over half a dozen of those are currently under construction, and that is bringing job opportunities not only to their local construction industry, but it is creating job opportunities, union opportunities for folks coming in from Los Angeles, Orange County, and San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Finally, we're going to hear from Dr. Bill Watkins, Cal Lutheran, about Ventura County.
When we look at counties around Los Angeles, we used to think that Orange County was probably a model for Ventura County. And this was reinforced by things like Amgen, Baxter moved there, a few other manufacturers. But I think we've been looking at the wrong direction. Over the past few years, it's seemed to us that the economy is actually much more like South Coast of Santa Barbara, which means not much happens at all. And until a couple of months ago, in fact, year-over-year jobs growth was actually negative. So we've got that, but that creates a real challenge for the community, because agriculture is a big part of our economy, and it employs an awful lot of people, and those people don't earn enough to live in Ventura County in the way that you and I would like to live. And so I think this is the problem. When I recently told a couple hundred people in Ventura County, there's about half of the people were happy. Oh boy, South Coast Santa Barbara. And probably about half were unhappy because they want jobs for their children or something like that. And so this is a political thing, but I think the economics and the demographics mean that we move more and more toward a South Coast Santa Barbara economy where it becomes wealthier and poorer at the same time, older and younger. So quite an interesting phenomenon.
Thank you, Bill. So we wanted to talk about the whole SCAG region for a second. And as you've heard from the individual counties, there's a lot of diversity in terms of the recovery and the pace of the recovery. While we can say the whole SCAG region is moving in the right direction, there remain really a number of threats. You heard about a lot of them today. Self-inflicted, it seems. A number of threats as this economy begins to recover and move forward, and I know that's what you're going to talk about the rest of the day. So you've heard about some particularly hard-hit areas of Southern California that are likely to remain under pressure until the end of this decade. I think that's probably surprised everybody. So that's kind of what our projection is overall, that Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura have extended their estimates of recovery from an average of 2 years to 4 years. And we think that the whole SCAG region probably at this point will not recover as a whole back to 2007 levels until the 2018 to 2020 time period. So sort of a best case 2018, worst case 2020. We still have approximately 575,000 jobs we need to create in this economy, this 6-county SCAG economy, to reach that pre-recession level of December 2007. So it looks like we're a ways off. Now, I'd love to talk to you about some excellent work that Dr. Cooper and LAEDC did on industry clusters in Southern California. I was really happy that President Becerra added this as a component of the SCAG recovery strategy this year. I think clusters are the way that we think about the way a modern economy works and how to understand that, how to understand the drivers, and also think about it in terms of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And also this is definitely an area where public policy and our legislative efforts can intersect with either helping clusters, individual clusters, or hurting them. And this was all based upon sort of the gold standard. Dr. Michael Porter at the Harvard Business School developed this a few years ago. And the way to think about the power of industry clusters, you've already actually heard about several of them. You need only look at California and some of our centers of excellence, like Silicon Valley is the world center of computers and software. Hollywood, obviously, is the world center of entertainment and movies. And one of my favorites, Napa Valley and Sonoma County, are world centers for wine, the wine industry. So that's a way to think about it. And we divide industry clusters into sort of two areas. One are what we call traded clusters, and those are really the way that economies grow and flourish. And those are like Hollywood or Silicon Valley. These are things that we can export. These are things that bring wealth back into the area. We also have local clusters that just serve the population, the local population that's located in the area. They serve the local business community. So when we're looking at the SCAG region, the top industry clusters on the traded side, well, I'll start with local clusters actually first, because they are, just like consumers are 2/3 to 70% of the economy, our local clusters that serve consumers are the biggest employers. So health services, local commercial services, local hospitality establishments, real estate construction and development, and local retail. So they create a large amount of jobs, a large amount of employment opportunities. I want to focus the rest of this on the traded clusters, because that's the way, that's how this SCAG region economy is really going to recover. And those are the things that we can actually think about, like tax credits for the film industry, something to spur discussion about. These are particular clusters that are going to be key drivers of the economy and have big multiplier effects. So when you create a job in one of these clusters, you're creating 2 and 3 other jobs throughout the rest of the economy. So for the SCAG region as a whole, trade is the #1 traded cluster in terms of employment, followed very closely by business services, entertainment, hospitality and tourism, education and knowledge creation, financial services, fashion, and then the rest are in your packet there. I did want to, for a second, talk individually by county at what looked like the strongest traded industry clusters, and those are defined by this thing called location quotient. And what a location quotient says is we're much more concentrated in that particular sector if you're over, say, 1 or 1.5 than you are throughout the rest of the nation as a whole. So at the SCAG regional level, the top traded clusters are entertainment, fashion, aerospace, analytical instruments, sporting, recreational, and children's goods, and biomedical. I did want to just go quickly through by county. Agricultural products, power generation and transmission, processed food and heavy machinery in Imperial County. In Los Angeles County, entertainment, fashion, aerospace, analytical instruments, and trade. In Orange County, analytical instruments, sporting, recreational, and children's goods, biomedical, information technology, hospitality and tourism, aerospace, fashion, power generation and transmission, and communications equipment. In Riverside County, agricultural products, biomedical, building fixtures and supplies, and sporting, recreational, and children's goods. San Bernardino County, furniture, building equipment, and metal manufacturing. And finally, in Ventura, agricultural products, biomedical, communications equipment, analytical instruments, and chemical products. So those are key areas key industries in your particular county that you might want to start paying attention to and thinking about how you can start to grow something that's already flourishing in your area. So with that, I'd like to turn over and talk now about some work we did on accelerating transportation investments in Southern California. This is really an important question because as we looked at the RTP SCS, we saw the true economic impact of what transportation investments mean for Southern California, and we get sort of triple benefit there. In one way, we get benefit from just constructing the facilities, and we get construction jobs and all the related jobs associated with the construction of the transportation infrastructure. We also get network benefits, so it helps out with our business competitiveness, and it makes a more efficient system. It allows business to transport goods and services better. It allows employees to commute in quicker to their place of work. And finally, operations, and this is really where it gets down to the individual household level. So an improved transportation system means fuel cost savings, less wear and tear on your car, and finally, less time spent sitting in traffic. So the Glue Council and our staff really thought about what the best way to look at this was. And there are a number of ways that we could have looked at this. We considered a lot of different methods. But in the end, what we decided to do was take a 5-year slice of the RTP investment cycle. So we took 2021 to 2025, moved that up 5 years, and saw what the benefits would be of doing that. And we did it in exactly the same way that we did the RTP SCS economic impact analysis. We used the REMI Transite model, moved those investments up 5 years, and we really, you can see in your program, the impact that would have on the Southern California economy if we could do it. We were agnostic about how to do it, whether that meant reform, such as breaking down barriers or America Fast Forward, whether that would be financing mechanisms, whatever that would be, we were agnostic on that. We were just saying, if you can cut the typical time, I think, is 17 years to get a transportation project built. If you can cut that 5 years, what would be the true impact of that? And so for construction jobs, we saw it would move up over 100,000 jobs per year during that 5-year time period. And that's in an industry sector that's been particularly hard hit in this recession. So very important to get those workers back to work. And that would create about $35 billion additional GDP in the Southern California economy. Secondly, we would get the network benefits earlier. And one way to think about that is the construction jobs we just sort of moved up. We pulled those forward. Those would have occurred anyway in that 2021 to 2025 time period. We're just moving those up because we want to accelerate job creation in construction. The network benefits, we would never get back those lost 5 years from moving those up. So the network benefits, yes, we would have gotten those in 2021 to 2025, but now we're getting those in 2016 to 2020. Those lost years we would never get back. And that accounts for over 120,000 jobs per year that we would have over that five-year time period. And that would create about $71 billion in additional GDP in the SCAG region economy. In terms of operations, same thing. Those would be lost years if we didn't accelerate those project 5 years. Residents get those benefits earlier in terms of fuel cost savings and in terms of wear and tear on their car, time spent in traffic. And that would create over 80,000 additional jobs per year during the time period that we would accelerate the 5 years, and create almost $50 billion more in terms of the local economy, in terms of GDP. I think the most important thing, those are very, very important, but we would have construction cost savings, and they would be significant as well. And that's because, although it's been the opposite in the last couple of years, typically construction cost inflation has been much more than general inflation. If you look back, we look back about 40 years, construction costs average at least 1% and closer to 2% per year over just our core inflation rate. And that's because of materials and other things that are going into the construction of transportation projects. So accelerating those up 5 years, if we could do that, per year we would save between $1.2 and $1.9 billion on those projects. Over the 5-year time period that we took the 2021 to 2025, that created cost savings of $6.8 to $9.9 billion. And that would allow us, especially at a time of limited transportation funding at the state and federal level, that would allow us to reinvest those savings back into the system. So on average, we would save 5 to 9% on each construction project by moving it up 5 years by simply doing that. So we think that that's a key thing to think about. We think it's very clear that there is a huge benefit to accelerating transportation investments in Southern California. We need to remain competitive in a sort of global economy. We heard about a lot of the industry clusters that would benefit from this. We heard that it's going to be a while before this economy recovers. And what are the things that we can do to potentially accelerate that recovery? And one of the, I think, key things to think about is let's accelerate some of those transportation investments and think about the best way to do that. So with that, I will turn it back over to either Hassan or Frank.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody.
For that very informative presentation. Thank you to all of our prominent economists for that presentation. And the salad that was mentioned will be coming out very, very shortly. We intend to continue to work right through lunch. The lunch will be served very, very shortly. We can't do this with the no food buzz, so the lunch will be served as the discussions here continue. Also, you have comment cards in front of you. If you have any comments about what you just heard, please fill them out, and SCAG staff will provide them to me here, and we'll get those questions answered. We're going to have an open discussion now, ladies and gentlemen, on what you just heard with business group leaders, labor leaders, and others in the audience, Transportation Authority representatives, and other elected officials in the audience. I'd like to first call upon Bill Allen, the President and CEO of the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. Please welcome Bill Allen with his impressions on what we just heard here today.
Good to see you. Thank you, Frank. And thank you all for being here today for this important discussion. And I want to thank Hassan and SCAG and the Southern California Leadership Council for making this annual meeting possible. What I just observed is sobering. The extended time period for which we will need to recover the jobs that were lost during the Great Recession. Controller Chung said that we're recovering this year even more quickly than other parts of the U.S., but not fast enough. When you look at numbers for Los Angeles County, Ventura County, the Inland Empire counties, and see that we will not recover the jobs lost in the Great Recession until 2018 or as long as 2020. That's more than 10 years since the Great Recession. And that does not take into account the jobs that will be needed for the population growth of a few 100,000 people in this SCAG region over that period. And that's not just an economic crisis, that's a public health crisis. There is a growing body of research that has been growing, frankly, for decades, that unemployment and underemployment, particularly long-term unemployment and underemployment, has serious mental and physical health impacts. It contributes to increased rates of depression, of substance abuse, of spousal abuse, of child abuse, of diabetes, of heart disease, of stroke. This is affecting people in our communities, people in their families, and our communities in general. So we have a moral obligation to be more proactive, to be more strategic, to be persistent, and to act with a sense of urgency about recovering this regional economy much more quickly. This region and this state has profound and unparalleled economic assets to build on, and we're at the right time in history to build on them. This will be the Pacific century. This is a century with the rise of the Asian economies where our state's location along this Pacific Rim gives us a competitive advantage. Prior generations' vision to create airports and seaports and universities and transportation networks have given us the foundation on which we built the 20th largest economy in the world, a $550 billion economy in LA County, one of the top 15 economies throughout the SCAG region, one of the top 10 economies in the world as the state of California. But in the 21st century, we have to do even more. And SCAG is showing the way. And the Southern California Leadership Council, their partner in the economic development generation of ideas and strategies is showing the way. The SCAG economic recovery strategy, the SCAG legislative priorities are showing the way. Your local and regional economic development corporations are showing the way with the strategic plans that have been developed. Your regional associations like the Southern California Leadership Council, statewide leadership associations like the Real Coalition founded by Lucy Dunn and Carl Gardino, regional economic association leadership organizations from all across this state are all showing the way. The question is, will we follow? Will we act with urgency? There are opportunities to address challenges that have been identified by the private sector for years. The private sector is willing to invest in our state and in our region if we'll just stop making it so hard for them to do so. Across the various sectors, whether it's entertainment or trade or aerospace or healthcare or hospitality and tourism, there are private sector dollars that are looking at opportunities in this state, but they're comparing them against opportunities in other states. And we have to make this state more attractive, this region more attractive to attract that investment, because it remains limited and it remains in a competitive play against other regions and other states and other nations. Your local chambers of commerce, your local building communities, your local project developers, your local EDCs have long identified the need to modernize the California Environmental Quality Act to make it a 21st century act. More recently, groups like the Southern California Leadership Council and the Real Coalition took that up as a major priority. And this last year, a group called the California Stewardship Network, a group of triple bottom line organizations, not just economic organizations, but organizations committed to environmental improvements and social equity improvements, all said in a statewide meeting representing the major economic regions of this state that it's finally time to absolutely, affirmatively modernize CEQA, because it is impacting not only our economy, it's impacting our education system, our housing. Even our environmental projects are being held up by abuse of CEQA. No one involved that I know across this state, and I've met hundreds of people involved in trying to come up with good, reasonable ideas for improving that program, are looking to weaken its environmental protections. They're looking to stop the abuse of a noble act that was intended and can still improve our environmental quality in this state, while at the same time giving us opportunity to improve our economy, our education, our housing, and our environment. We have an opportunity to act, but it will take the leadership of all of the cities and counties that you represent to help the growing coalition who wants to improve that act. We must invest in education. The numbers were daunting to see the numbers about the number of bachelor's degrees in this region compared with the Bay Area, an area with much lower unemployment right now. If you look at a document called the Portrait of California, put out by an organization called the Human Development Index Organization, I believe, funded by most of the major state philanthropic foundations here in California. It will identify for you how your community stacks up in education levels, employment levels, life expectancy levels, down to each of your communities. And it's sobering, and you will see the direct correlation between levels of education and levels of employment and levels of prosperity in your communities. And so there's a lot of work to do. Again, our organization, the LAADC, is partnered with just about every organization around this arc of tables here, and with all of your cities in the LA area, and you've got similar organizations in each of your counties that want to partner with you so that business, government, education, labor, the environmental community can all work together to not only accelerate the projects that SCAG has identified in the RTP and their various strategies, but all of the public and private sector projects that can improve this great state, this great region, the economic opportunity for our residents, and the future of all Californians. So thank you for being here today. Let's act with urgency, and let's persist in this effort to both recover and sustain our long-term vitality.
Thank you very much, Bill. Allen, look forward to seeing you again very, very soon at the LAEDC Economic Forecast Breakfast event that'll be coming up before you know it. Appreciate it very much. The film industry, still a very big part of California's economy. I was reminded of that recently when I attended the Twilight premiere at LA Live. That was a big, big event. And with us now, Paul Audley, the president of Film LA. Paul Audley, ladies and gentlemen.
thank you all. I'm very pleased to be with you here today to talk about some of the things that the largest industry cluster for LA and a great one for the rest has to offer, and to really sort of help pitch the idea that as your region has talked about adopting a model film ordinance in coordination with LAEDC and the California Film Commission initiatives, and the kind of work and the speed with which we can retain and regain jobs in this industry, which is so mobile that they could be bringing back tens of thousands of jobs tomorrow if the economic situation in California were right for them. We know this year, for example, that 21 of 23 new television dramas have left the state of California, and for the first time in history, we're producing less than half the television here in LA and in California. It takes virtually nothing but competition with the other states and countries that have been dragging this industry away from us for years in order to return it overnight. You don't need to build the factory. You don't need to build more infrastructure. The crew base, the infrastructure is present. We just need to compete better. And I think we can see a lot of those numbers change pretty dramatically and pretty rapidly with an industry that is as mobile as the film industry is. We continue to work with you and for you in trying to make that happen, and we're looking forward to seeing continued improvement in those numbers as the years come forward. Thanks for all your good work and for entertaining the idea of making it easier to film in Southern California.
Thank you very much, Paul. Let's turn to our next special guest here today. And by the way, the names were called out. We have microphones, of course, probably right in front of you, so no need to come up to the podium unless you insist on doing so. We'd like to call upon Amy Lemish, Executive Director of the California Film Commission. It was reported this year on the KNX Business Hour that the LAEDC, California Film Commission, and SCAG joined together to help protect the more than 6,600 business establishments that comprise California's film, TV, and commercial production industry, and the hundreds of thousands of jobs supported by the entertainment industry throughout the state. Amy Lemish, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you, Frank. Can I do it from here? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, so working on creating a film-friendly environment throughout the state is something we work on every day in conjunction with Paul from Film LA to try and encourage our cities, counties, regions throughout the state to welcome this industry and make it easier for those productions that do choose to film here to enable them to accomplish their work. Of course, the big elephant in the room is the Film and Television Tax Credit Program, which my office administers. And as you may know, we were granted a 2-year extension in the last legislative session. So just to give you a brief overview of that program, it started in 2009. And since that time, we have allocated about $500 million in tax credits to eligible film and television productions. It's a rather narrow pool of eligibility, so not every project is eligible, but those that are, it's targeting the types of productions that are most likely to leave the state. Of those projects that were accepted into the program, in the aggregate, they'll be spending $3.9 billion in direct production spending, and of that, $1.3 billion is in wages to their below-the-line crew, which we term it below the line. It's the film workers, the grips and electricians and makeup artists, the people that actually make up the jobs, skilled jobs of getting these productions done. So it is a huge economic impact every time a film or television project chooses to locate in California. Another way of looking at it, which we often do in discussions with legislators that might not be as familiar with this industry, is to look at it on a project basis. So if I have $40 million to make a movie, do we want them to spend that $40 million here? This is direct spending. Or do we want them to take that $40 million to New Mexico or Canada and spend it there? Well, I would like them to spend it here. So that's what we're working to achieve. The more production that we can keep in California, the more jobs, the more spending at small support businesses, which, of course, expands and helps the entire state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This just in, we have a couple of questions from the floor, and I'd like to, while Senator Wright is still here, put them to you, Senator, if you don't mind. We do have a question here. How can we at SCAG help you on policy matters such as project streamlining? And also, what are the results from and implications for modernization and automation and technological replacement of existing and previous jobs. You were talking about the aerospace industry and the jobs lost in that sector and the ongoing drain in the manufacturing sector, partially because of technological innovations. Give us your thoughts on those questions, sir. Thank you.
In my district, I have some 9 cities. Judy Mitchell is one of my mayors and council members, and Long Beach is in my district. Every one of you here who's elected has a representative who's either a senator or a member of the assembly. I thought that the outcry that should have come, for example, from cities when the governor proposed to eliminate redevelopment, there was a deafening silence from most of you at the cities. You should have been just screaming at your senators for voting for that. When I argued against it, I said, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. It ain't going to produce any money. It laid off 6,000 people. It idled 20,000 construction workers. Most of you here who represent cities, 4 of your cities went bankrupt, and the state still hasn't gotten any money. But there wasn't enough hue and cry that came from you to your legislators, many of whom voted for it. I talked to my cities, and they all said to the person, oh, hell no. When I called Bob Foster in Long Beach, he said, y'all done lost your mind. I think what we've got to do is, again, to begin to look at, as I was describing, kind of like what you want the outcome to be. It's not like you can wish that jobs show up. It's not like you can just hope that those things occur. Regulatory stuff is become entrenched because it has now become, again, a de facto government. I did another bill that said that the water board has to talk to you. And I know you're going, what the hell does that mean? Because up until this year, a board didn't even have to consult with cities. They were about to pass a multi-billion-dollar set of regulations that they completely pulled out of some place that I can't describe on a public microphone because none of you had the opportunity to even have the discussion. Some cities are going to look at as much as $2 or $3 million, and that's small cities. Those kinds of discussions you need to bring up with the people that you send to Sacramento and let them know that you have issues with that. Rolling Hills called me and said, we've got some issues with some of the things that the water board is talking about. That kind of dialogue between your locals, you have to make sure that those things occur. And again, I mean, I know that we euphemistically like to say we want to invest in education. Yeah, that makes good sense if you got money. But if you broke, then you can't invest in it. And so you have to make sure that you create the revenue that you have so that you're able to invest it. I'll tell you another little secret. Again, I wasn't real pleased with Prop 30. I don't like sales tax because they're regressive, but apart from that, every time you think, and I learned this because, again, my district is schizophrenic. I represent Palos Verdes and Watts. So if you ever want to have, you know, a good discussion that'll drive you crazy, do the Watts Christmas parade one morning and then do the Rolling Hills Palos Verdes Christmas parade that night. I mean, it's kind of like tea and crumpets and a bottle of Pellegrino. But one of the things that we've got to begin to look at, again, as you move forward, is how the regulatory agencies move forward. That's a scary notion. There was an auction yesterday, no, it was last week, pardon me, that CARB did on what are called cap and trade bonds. It was kind of innocuous. You didn't really see it in the paper. There's going to be a roughly 20% increase in your electric bill. What is one of the things that people say drives them out of California? The electric bill is too high. We just raised your electric bill 20%. Didn't really appear in the paper. It was kind of quiet and under the radar. Jesse Knight knows it because San Diego Gas and Electric is going to stick it on your bill. Those kinds of things are the things that we have to begin to look at. I mean, because if it costs too much to play, people simply won't. They will say, I can't, as the gentleman said in the film industry, I can go someplace else. There are a lot of people who would like to have money. And one of the things that used to make California, particularly Southern California, unique was weather. But you know what? On a computer now, I can simulate weather, so I don't need those things that I used to need to come here. Hell, I can make a movie in a green room. So when Cecil B. DeMille first came here and was talking about making movies and how he could do it, your ad don't matter anymore. So you look up and you're competing with New Mexico and New York and all those places for movies. Those become our challenges, y'all. So what I'm saying is that if we want to have manufacturing, then we're going to have to compete for it. If we're going to have the movie business, we're going to have to compete for it. If we're going to have an aerospace infrastructure, that's already gone. I'm not breaking the news to anyone here, but the aerospace people gone. The last major installation was Northrop, and they're now in Falls Church, Virginia. Lockheed left. Boeing would leave. The only reason Boeing is still in Long Beach is that the C-17 contract says they can't take it to Seattle. Otherwise, they too would have been gone. And if you saw in the paper, Boeing said, we're going to shut down half the other stuff that we bought from Rocketdyne and the other companies and get out of Dodge. You really want to see how this works in a macro sense. Drive to the end of the Century Freeway in my district and look at how it terminates in what used to be, as people now say, why would you build a freeway and a green line train that stops where there ain't no jobs? There were 2 million jobs there when they planned that project. The jobs are simply gone. Those become the challenges, ladies and gentlemen, that we face, where we've got a plan down the road. We built a rail system in the middle of a freeway where now there ain't no damn jobs. There are a few people who are still left there. But it wasn't that the people who built the rail system were dumb. It was that they couldn't plan for the fact that the economy would blow up around them, and it took so long to get it built that by the time it finally opened up, the jobs were gone. We have a challenge that the world, not just China, not just India, but even other regions in the United States are competing with us. We buy more cars than anybody else in the world, and we don't make none. Again, I'll leave you with another metaphor because that's how we talk in my neighborhood. When the producer names the tune, the consumer got to dance. If you don't want to simply be the consumer, then you better learn how to be productive again. If we're not producing stuff, that's bad. And I'll leave you with one last thought. I'm going to get out of the way because y'all are going to eat. The Germans have what is considered to be the best vocational education model in the world. They have an internship program that's second to none. The funniest thing I've ever heard in my life was being in Munich, Germany, to hear the Chancellor of Education in Germany tell me that the system that he uses came from California. The challenge we have is that much of what we've done from years ago, whether it was our education master plan, the vocational ed system that we had, all of those things that we used to do, we got away from. And I agree with you, we're going to have a battle about CEQA. CEQA is another one of those regulations, and the unfortunate part of it is that those of you who play it know that it wasn't even written. CEQA is a series of court decisions that don't even make no damn sense. Some of them actually conflict with one another, and you don't know how it's going to go out because every portion of CEQA gets litigated because there's no framework that tells you what the outcome is going to be. I can file against you without putting up any money. I have no risk to tie up your project. Your competitor works against you, and in the long run, you end up where it's used as a means of stopping. We've got challenges ahead of us, y'all. Thank you so much. I didn't mean to take up so much of your time.
Senator, thank you very, very much. Continuing our conversation now with business leaders, please welcome Randall Lewis, housing industry leader, business representative to SCAG's Regional Council regarding housing. Randall Lewis.
Not on. Thank you, Frank. This has been a great session. I think there were sort of 4 or 5 things I took away. First, that the housing news is actually better than what the economists reported. Their data is usually lagging a month or two. So I think when you start seeing what happened in December and November, things will be better. We've seen a lot of good things happening now based on sort of what SCAG has done the last couple of years. I just wanted to share a couple of success stories. First, in San Bernardino County, and to a lesser extent Riverside, but really San Bernardino County, county leadership has started a visioning process to make San Bernardino County as business-friendly as possible. They're working on that at the county level and also the city level. And I think the work they're doing now with their visioning process will really pay dividends in the years before, and it's something that could be modeled into the other counties. On the terms of clustering, we're seeing some interesting stuff in the Inland Empire, where one of the things they're going to try to tackle is the healthcare. And what they're going to do, we've got 7 college presidents that are meeting, and these are presidents who never talk to each other, to say how can we create coordinated curriculums so that we can grow a healthcare cluster in the Inland Empire. And I think that's really positive, and about 2014 it's going to pay big dividends. And then lastly, there was a lot of talk about the value of accelerating projects. Almost everybody has mentioned that. And it has so much impact. I know that there are a lot of housing projects throughout Southern California where people would start tomorrow if they could just get through the entitlement process quicker. And Bill Allen mentioned it, when you get meaningful CEQA reform, it doesn't mean hurt the environment. It just means getting through the process quicker. So I think if we could accelerate these projects, we would see such a magnification of the benefits that it'd be enormous. So we're really thrilled that we're in the position we're in, and I think good things are happening, but we have to do it with a sense of urgency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call on David Fleming now, the founding chair of the Los Angeles Business Federation, LA BizFed. We spoke on the Business Hour this week regarding the fiscal cliff and other big issues facing the business community. Thank you very much. Please welcome David Fleming.
Thank you very much, Frank. The godfather of BizFed, the Los Angeles County Business Federation, was the LA Area Chamber of Commerce, and Gary Tobin, who is the president of the chamber, is with us this morning. We formed BizFed for the whole purpose of bringing together the divergent business groups in Los Angeles County, and now there are 110 of them that are part of BizFed, to put them around a table to share ideas and to build numbers. Because strangely enough, there are more businesses in California than there are union members. And it's important to build the numbers because until now, business has not really been organized. I was asked to talk about what business in this Southern California area fears the most. Well, other than all being cliff dwellers right now, I think what we're fearing the most is Sacramento. Because of what happened in November and the supermajorities in that state. I'm reminded of the age-old sitcom where you have the irate husband who says to the wife, "You overspend," and she says back, "No, I don't overspend, you under-earn." That may be the mindset of the California legislature. Not about cutting back the expenses of state government, the size, the scope, but rather the fact that we as Californians don't pay enough in taxes. And it's going to be a big fight up there, and we have to be part of that fight to make sure that the business community that's already been horribly damaged by taxes and regulations, and there is a tsunami of regulations that come about every year, that we, again, can hold the line as far as taxes are concerned. You know, California now is listed officially on Wall Street as the worst state in America in which to do business. Texas is the best state. You know, it's amazing because Texas and California have a lot in common. We both share a border with Mexico. We both have large Latino populations growing within our midst. We both have oil. We both have ports. We both have problems with illegals. But Texas is number one as far as business friendly. I have an idea. I think it would be a good idea if we sent our state legislature and our state elected offices, starting with the governor, to go to Texas for a week and ask some questions. What are you guys doing right that we're not? It may be the best money California taxpayers ever spent. It's time that the last place team learned what the first place team does to be successful. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David Fleming. Continuing our program now in our conversation, I'd like to call on Lucy Dunn, the President and CEO of the Orange County Business Council, Lucy Dunn.
Thank you, Frank. I just want to say I got a hall pass today because I'm supposed to be at a California Transportation Commission hearing in Riverside. And Andre Brutros and Susan Branson, also from the California Transportation Commission staff, is here joining me today. That's how important this conference is, not only to the business community, but as well in my role as a state transportation commissioner. And I have to tell you, also representing Fran, don't forget about Goods Movement Inman, and Yvonne Burke, who also send their regards and wanted to be here today, but they're covering for me on the commission. The information that was presented today, the word again is sobering. And from the commissioner's perspective, we're thrilled that the focus was on infrastructure and accelerating project delivery. Transportation infrastructure is cross-cutting to all of those industry clusters you saw analyzed. It helps everybody grow, all ships rise. And you already know that the state is working on a statewide transportation funding needs assessment that say we need $300 billion statewide for infrastructure investment. But when you look at those acceleration numbers, maybe we don't need that much if we can get that regulatory reform we're looking for. So bravo to the economists at SCAG for bringing to the attention at this level some amazing concepts that I know we at CTC need to take back and really work with Caltrans and work on those innovations and efficiencies that we can share with our public, really make delivery of infrastructure important and available to all. From the business side, you've already heard today, there's lots of money sitting on the side ready to invest in California, but for the regulatory environment, we're asking for certainty there. And your local government commitment to those business-friendly principles that you developed has been phenomenal, because you're the ground up. You are what starts it. Keep up those good work, cutting red tape, and rolling out red carpet for business. It's really helpful. Last but not least, those education numbers, let me reiterate, are extremely troubling to business. That's our future workforce, ladies and gentlemen. We must align as a community, business, government, environment, labor, all of us together to get that education system right for Southern California. So thank you very much for your strong, great work here, and we stand committed, both from my hat at the state level and my local hat, to making this work. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy Dunn, and especially thank you for coming up all the way from Orange County. And with us now, Wally Baker. Great to see you here, Wally Baker, Executive Director of the Jobs First Alliance.
Thank you, Frank. I'm really happy to be here again this year. My name is Wally Baker, and I work with Jobs First Alliance. We have focused a lot on trade and infrastructure in the last few years with SCAG and with Beat the Canal. As we go forward next year, we're certainly going to look at continuing our infrastructure work. We'll also probably pick up some water stuff and redevelopment issues as well. But I want to first thank SCAG for really an unwavering commitment over the last 3 years, putting this together, keeping this on track, making the kind of investment in research and economics that you simply have to have a clear playbook. So again, I have to thank Hassan and Sharon and Glenn and all the folks at SCAG for the kind of work they're doing. What we're really kind of taking away is that the ports are of national and state significance. Their improvement in infrastructure is very critical. It all connects to what we're doing. In the Beat the Canal initiative, we've had 60 projects worth about $7.5 billion. Frankly, all of those are on track moving forward. There's still another $48 billion that we're going to have to raise out there for additional goods movement projects going forward. But right now, in terms of what we're getting done to be more competitive with the Panama Canal, we're doing very well there. I think that, it's great that we finished up the longshore strike, and that went back, they went back to work yesterday. A couple of them were going to be here today, but they're pretty busy getting everybody back in shape. In the picture of labor and management, you want to keep your eyes on the ILA, which is the International Longshore Association. They're in the East Coast and the Gulf Coast. They're a separate union, but they certainly have each other's back. And I would say they're in their extension period, which I think expires in the next 30 to 45 days. And they have serious, total, complete contractual negotiations going on. So what we saw in a few 8 days, could very likely, if they don't come to resolution, be very significant for the East Coast and the West Coast. And it's never good to have that kind of situation, but I think generally the East Coast situation is a lot more dire than ours because they have made no improvements, no enhancements to their system, which helps us competitively. But I suggest you keep your eyes on that. That will be something that will again shift cargo back our way as well. The legislation that SCAG is proposing that we've worked on with them is excellent. The AB 2656 did not make it through because of all the budget stuff, but I believe now maybe this year we will have another serious look at that. Of course, I work with the building trades, the electricians, the railroads, business, everybody, but hopefully we can put a coalition together around that and around export financing to grow jobs there. So again, this year, I look forward to working with SCAG and all of you and the legislators and see if we can't continue to grow jobs, because jobs first is the name we call ourselves, and that's our objective, is to get jobs first. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wally Baker. I'd like to call on Chris Hannon now with the Los Angeles Orange County Building Trades Group. Chris Hannon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chris Hannon. I am the council representative of the Los Angeles and Orange Counties Building and Construction Trades Council. We represent over 140,000 craftsmen and women within 52 affiliate local unions throughout 14 trades. Currently, many of our affiliates are experiencing 40 to 50% downturns in hours. The hours are slowly coming back, but this is serious. We are deeply involved in the planning for and construction of the future of Los Angeles and Orange counties. Today's presentation by our economic experts is a wake-up call. The key business industry clusters shown on page 6 of the program indicate we have 6.8 million jobs at stake if we continue losing jobs out of this state and overseas. The building industry, which is a key component, and we're a serious player in that, this is a big part of the economy. We should all support legislation priorities to increase exports and imports throughout the ports, increasing financing mechanisms, and expedited project delivery. There's real savings involved with expediting these projects. Right now, most projects are seriously coming in well below engineered estimates. The building trade supports priorities listed in the program because they are good for the community, labor, and business, and the building trades members who live and work in the communities. We all want projects that are good for our communities and good for our economies. Thank you for having the building trades at your event.
Thank you very much, and all the best to you guys there. Delighted to now welcome Gary Tobin, the President and CEO of the Greater Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. Gary Tobin.
Frank, thank you. Well, I think Rod kicked it off well, the senator, when he said, if it don't make jobs, it don't make sense. And I hope that we all walk away from here today remembering that. And then I'd like to add to that a statement that Will Rogers made when he said, you may be on the right track, But if you're not going fast enough, you'll get run over anyway. And that was the second point today. We need to accelerate everything we're doing. We need to move much faster. In business, there's a saying, time is money. That saying has to be a part of everything that government does as well. It was sobering to think that we're not going to have a recovery till full recovery till 2018 or 2020, which means we have to accelerate everything we've been talking about, especially infrastructure and education. CEQA reform is on one of the lists. Everyone has talked about it. We cannot move our economy forward at a faster pace until we find a way to create jobs and improve the environment at the same time and move so much faster. The partnership between business, labor, local government has to take the lead. I do not believe the leadership will come from Sacramento. I think it has to come from people like those of you that are in this room. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary Tobin. I'd like to call on Greg Devereaux. Greg Devereaux, the CEO of the County of San Bernardino.
It's interesting. We've been coming here now for several years. I thank SCAG for putting this together and getting business and nonprofits and government together. Senator Wright is right, and so are many other people who have spoken here today. I appreciated his passion, and I appreciated what Randall and Bill Allen have said about a sense of urgency. But I don't see it yet. You know, Senator Wright said something that was everybody's talked about everything being sobering. Well, you know what was sobering to me? He said, we didn't speak loudly enough about redevelopment being taken away in this state. And if we didn't speak loudly enough about redevelopment being taken away in this state, then we're sure as hell not speaking loudly enough about overregulation and the lack of clarity in regulation and it killing jobs in this state. If I've heard anything today, I heard that we've got to stay committed and we've got to speak ever more loudly with a unified voice. If you remember when we came here last time, we came here last year, we didn't get a single thing out of our legislative platform. We didn't get a single thing from the governor. We didn't get a single thing from the legislature. It is time that we said, we are mad as hell and we're not going to take it anymore. We can't afford this. We can't have a lost decade in terms of jobs in our economy. And it's incumbent on every one of us to stay committed and speak as loudly as we can. Thank you very much.
Continuing our open discussion now, joining us, Ralph Cardoza, the CEO of the County of Riverside.
Thank you. It's Ralph Cordova, County Imperial. I appreciate everything that's been said here today, but I'm going to go ahead and turn the mic over as a good bureaucrat to my supervisors here and have them make the comments first.
Well, I would certainly echo what has just been said. I think that we've all fallen asleep at the wheel. We all have legislators that represent us, and I think we're all close to these legislators, but we're not doing anything about it. And we do need to go back home and yank at their heels or yank at whatever you can reach and make something happen, because we're missing the boat, and it's our own fault. There you go, John.
Hi, John Renison, the County of Imperial, representing 3 ports of entry, and I don't think California gets it yet on Mexico. We're not doing what we can, the potential there, the cross-border. The federal government's not wanting to invest in infrastructure because they don't want any more federal buildings, but ports of entry create jobs, and it's an economic engine, and we need to make people aware. Sacramento had a hearing down there the other day, 2 assembly people regarding the Mexico-California Binational Relations Council. Going to pass a resolution to support us, Imperial County, in demanding that the federal government do something and spend money on border infrastructure. Well, that's all well and good, but I think it really needs to happen. Thank you.
And just a couple other things, Ralph Cordova again. I did what in support of my 2 board members indicate here. One of the things that I really truly appreciate is the fact that we're addressing the overregulation issue again. That was addressed several years ago. This is the 3rd one I've been to. It's been talked about each time. We need to continue that. I took very few notes, but that was one of the things that I wrote down here, that we need to continue that fight. The other one is the legislative platform. We need to continue with our legislative platform and really be more aggressive, if you will, with respect to that. And last but not least, we cannot forget, and Supervisor Renison said it here, is the ports of entry. I appreciate discussion about the ports of entry, but we cannot forget the land port of entries. And the infrastructure there is outdated, outmoded. We really need to start focusing on that with respect to goods movements. Thank you.
Let me ask you about AB 32, which is set to kick in on Jan 1. Have you guys taken a look at the impact of that?
Somewhat. I can't sit here and recite it to you, but somewhat. I mean,
sure, we'll hear more about it as we go along. Thank you. Is the unemployment rate still up around 25% there in Imperial County?
Actually, it just came in at 30.
30% unemployment rate in Imperial County.
If I could speak briefly to that, and thank goodness for the solar projects. In the last 4 months, 3 solar projects have come on board, and they are employing, it doesn't sound a lot, but they're employing upwards of 800 people out of Imperial County.
It's amazing. Well, thank you very much for being part of this, and we certainly wish you all the best there in Imperial County, and certainly more attention needs to be focused on what's happening there. John Goodman, CEO of Town Hall Association. John Goodman. Paging John Goodman.
Yes,
go right ahead.
I'm here. Good day, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and of course, as so many of you know, worked for 20 years with Jack on economic development strategies. And I can't second, third, fourth emphasize enough that the idea of acceleration is exceedingly important. I would suggest also, as is done in so many states, that potentially, I don't know, this may be really one of my stranger ideas. I do have a lot of them a lot. What you might think relative to CEQA is assembling a study group, and as they do in so many states, and in reference to Mr. Fleming's comments, I did this in Texas for 10 years. You form a committee and you develop a model CEQA bill, and then you see what happens. The real difference between a Texas and a California is very simple. In Texas, the legislature meets every 2 years for 120 days, period. There is no permanent staff, and they only get per diem. Now, in Texas, they believe that meeting every 2 years for 120 days only is exactly the opposite of what it should be. So I would suggest if there are things that we think that are very important, we might put together study groups and develop model bills. If nothing else, it might move the conversation along a little faster. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John Goodman. I'd like to call now on Paul Granillo, Executive Director of the Inland Empire Business Association. Paul?
Thank you, Frank. I want to maybe expand a little bit on my mentor Lucy Dunn's comment about the importance of education and workforce. And I want to expand it into the area of diversity. The Inland Empire and the SCAG region is fastly approaching being a majority Latino region. And yet, because of our educational attainment, our workforce is not going to be as properly prepared as it should be. So the business community, the Inland Empire Economic Partnership, has created the Inland Empire Latino Leadership and Policy Institute. And the leadership piece is being led by business and we hope the public sector to take up-and-comers and to have them, to educate them to better understand the economy of Southern California, leadership, what it takes to lead in business and the public sector. And if we don't do that, we are going to exacerbate our problems. And so, as Lucy said, business community is incredibly worried about our educational attainment. I would also ask you to take a look at diversity and investing in the Latino population for our future.
Paul, thank you very much, and thanks for being on the Business Hour today, by the way. Cynthia Kurtz with us now, who participated in an On Your Corner broadcast we did recently in the San Gabriel Valley. She is the president and CEO of the San Gabriel Valley Economic Partnership. Cynthia Kurtz.
Thank you, and SCAG, thank you very much for all the information you provided. Working off of the same base of information is only going to make it more important for us to work together and make what we do more powerful. Just two things were people talking about the takeaways, and they've been mentioned, but two things that I think are so critical that we keep focused on. Paul just talked about it. So did others, and that's the connection between businesses and education. We have the ability to leave behind a whole group of people who thought they would get jobs with high school or even less than high school educations, and that's just not the case. Those entry-level jobs are not going to be there anymore, and if we don't focus on that, we are creating social problems and business problems for the future. And the other is the changing demographics. In the San Gabriel Valley, we are now 27 to 29% Asian. That's changing our businesses, that's changing our customers, it's changing what they want, and it means that it's important for business to continue to focus on those demographic changes and make sure that we are reacting to those in what we do in our businesses and what we do with our legislation. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Continuing our conversation, joining us now, Art Leahy, the CEO of the Los Angeles Metropolitan Transportation Authority.
Thank you very much. The report on the slow recovery certainly does indicate how urgent our work is. The information on the benefit of accelerating construction projects is also noteworthy. I'll certainly share that with the Metro Board. That, in fact, reflects the initiative of the MTA Board for what's called America Fast Forward, which was to accelerate our 27 major capital projects to do them in a quicker time period to create the benefits, the value of the transportation, the business benefit of mobility, obviously reduced energy, air quality, and of course jobs. As you know, Measure J was on the ballot a few days ago, failed by about 2/3 of 1%. I'm sure the MTA Board will be discussing what they make of that, but I will certainly give them the information here on the value of jobs. We will be seeking other ways of accelerating our program, such as low-interest federal loans. We think that's a good way for the federal government to get projects moving. We also think that we'll be looking at public-private partnerships. We'll be looking at a project under the Sepulveda Pass with a multi-decade franchise, perhaps a 12, 13-mile-long big bore tunnel. We'd like to move from the third decade of Measure R to the first decade. 710 project as well. The federals need to maintain their transit and highway funding. That's been a problem for a number of years. They can't get through on that. I want to echo Bill's comments on CEQA. In the 4 or 5 years of this recession, public agencies have received no relief from CEQA, even for transit projects which are designed to reduce emissions and congestion. No relaxation for transit. I'll also note, as Bill implied, there are abuses. We paid $20 million more for a yard for the goal line in the San Gabriel Valley over a CEQA issue. It was not the intent of CEQA to permit those sorts of things. I want to close by acknowledging, or just indicating, because the federal government will not have the money we think they should have, they need to incentivize the development of non-federal revenue streams such as Measure R. One way of doing that is to relax the rules. We get little of the money but all the rules. When a sales tax, a project is funded by a local sales tax, we should have more liberties to create local job preferences, local hiring preferences, rather than being bound by federal rules and having that be prohibited. With that, I will close. Thank you very much. Supervisor, would you like to say something?
Thank you very much. I forgot to say buon appetito earlier. I hope everyone's enjoying their lunch. We're privileged to have with us now the chair of the Los Angeles City Council's Trade, Commerce, and Tourism Committee, someone who loves Los Angeles. In fact, his middle name is L.A. Please welcome L.A. City Council Member Tom LaBonge.
Give Frank Motek for all he does for the business community and KNX in the business hour. And just got to give a shout out to the great director of the MTA, Art Leahy. Started driving the 31 bus on Los Feliz Boulevard and learned how important it is to make people mobile. Give Art a big hand because it makes a good effort every day. The thing I want to say is what Fleetwood Mac said. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop. It will soon be here. It is here. Our challenges are great, but we got to act like we're working like Mulholland did. 99 years ago, the aqueduct came from the northwest San Fernando Valley all the way from Owens Valley. Fair and square, right or wrong, whatever you say, it was water that built this region. And from the work of DWP and the water and putting the city of Los Angeles together, Phineas Manning came from Wilmington, Delaware, and built the idea of the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach, as you see there. I'm glad that strike's over. Very important. Thank Mayor Villaraigosa for his efforts in that. But that being said, our airport now, an economic engine. The late, great Mayor Tom Bradley, just yesterday we announced Westfield's efforts to really customize the experience for people, because we all would, I don't want to say hate, that's a bad word, we dislike going through the airport, right, Gary Tobin? We want to make it a good experience, and that is changing and transforming, and to welcome people to Los Angeles. And it's not just Los Angeles. You're close to San Diego. You're close to Arizona and the great Grand Canyon. You're close to Las Vegas. You're close to the Hoover Dam. You're close to cross that Owens Valley to Yosemite and do the triangle through San Francisco and back. Tourism is very important. So don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop. It will soon be here. But know that we got to welcome, and even all cities, not just the 88 in the county of Los Angeles, but around the multi-county region, tourism is extremely important. And partnerships, I give a shout out to Sherwood Williams that helped us paint the Hollywood sign, which is our gateway identification sign, and the partnership that they did. And Hassan, they also painted the Golden Gate Bridge and other monuments. Let's give Sherwood Williams a hand for their partnership. Thank you very much, Frank. Give a quick weather report right now as you go back there. I want to hear it.
Yeah. It's looking good, Tom. Partly cloudy today with a high up around 70. Still around 65 right now here in downtown. Tom LaBonge, thank you very, very much for being part of this event. And I'd like to call on Will Kempton now, the CEO of the Orange County Transportation Authority, OCTA.
Thank you, Frank. I want to thank President Becerra and Hassan for putting on the summit this year. We have been talking in the transportation community about accelerating project delivery for years. The problem is that we get together in our transportation confabs, our transportation conferences, and we talk to each other. This forum allows us an opportunity to make the case to business interests, to housing folks, to people that are outside of the normal transportation circle, and I think that that's very, very beneficial, because I think the time is really ripe for us to be able to do some things that we haven't been able to do in the past. We also ought to thank the voters of the Southern California region, who in most of our counties have approved local sales tax measures, because those dollars, as Mr. Leahy indicated, are helping us create and sustain thousands and thousands of jobs in this county at a time when they're sorely needed. Last year, the Orange County Transportation Authority spearheaded an initiative at the national level. We called it Breaking Down Barriers. We wanted to make sure that the federal delivery process moves quicker so that we can create jobs faster. We were successful in getting many of the provisions from the Breaking Down Barriers initiative included in the MAP 21, the latest federal authorizing legislation, and we're very, very proud of our efforts in that regard. We now need to focus on implementation. We can't let up. We now need to focus at the state level. It's not just CEQA reform, it's process reform. There are a lot of opportunities for us to be able to move projects through the pipeline more quickly. Innovative procurement opportunities. We don't have authority in California to build transportation projects the fastest way they can be built. Design, build, other innovative procurement opportunities need to be implemented quickly. So to accelerate Southern California's economic recovery, we do need to accelerate project delivery, and we look forward to working with SCAG to make it possible to get projects to construction sooner. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for being with us. Please welcome Darren Kettle, the CEO of the Ventura County Transportation Commission.
Thank you, Frank. Hassan earlier in the session raised the fact that SCAG had approved its regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. And it truly was an unprecedented moment that occurred here about 6 months ago. From a Ventura County perspective, though, it was slightly depressing, because you look at the map of projects that are on that 2035 RTP, and there's a giant blank spot in Ventura County. And as we look towards our future, we recognize the fact that Will was kind enough in his comments to say most of the counties in Southern California have local revenue streams to support transportation investment. I get to represent the county that is the one of the outliers. We have one project that's going to be going to construction in Ventura County starting in the fall of next year. Other than that, we have not one highway project that's even on the drawing board. Our local roads are at a point where we're 50% underfunded as we look towards the next 30 years, with no funding identified at this point. A couple of months ago, Lucy Dunn was asking all of the county executive officers from transportation agencies a question about, what do you tell the consulting community when they come to you and ask about where is the next level of work? Where are the next big jobs that we can pursue in the construction industry and in the engineering industry? I had to somewhat half-jokingly say, you go to Santa Barbara County or you go to Los Angeles County, because we simply don't have the revenue stream to support construction work and engineering work at this point in Ventura County. If Los Angeles County can't pass Measure J, a county that has a proven track record for delivering projects, or if Alameda County can't pass their measure extension, a county the home of Berkeley and Oakland, we have to really look hard about where we're going to go as it relates to voter-approved measures and whether a two-thirds supermajority requirement is something that can still be passed. That's something we're going to have to look at for the purposes of transportation infrastructure, whether it's in Ventura County, Southern California, or all of California. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren Kettle. And let's call on Mark Baza now, the CEO of the Imperial County Transportation Commission.
Thank you, Frank. For Imperial County, we're a small county. We try to make the most of the revenues that we have. We do have our own sales tax measure, and we're using those to enhance our roadway network within the county. But as you can imagine, the revenues aren't as great as they may be in other regions. Mexico, as my supervisor had mentioned, is a big part of our economy. There are about $14.5 billion in trade with Mexico, and half of those are exports from California companies. So it is an important part of our economy locally as well as in the state and the United States. We have an infrastructure need at the border crossings. We would like to pursue some public-private partnerships to help finance those infrastructure needs. We're not going to sit on our hands and wait for others to help us do that. We would like to pursue those opportunities, and we may need some legislative help or other help to overcome those obstacles. But that's what I have to share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're honored to have with us here the Mayor of Los Angeles County, the Honorable Mike Antonovich. Supervisor Antonovich, welcome. Thank you very much for being with us, and give us your thoughts on accelerating economic growth here in Southern California.
Well, thank you very much, Frank. Let me just a few items. One, I gave a talk last night in Santa Clarita for one of the town councils about the impact realignment is having on our counties, all 58 counties, on our state. We had a murder a couple days ago. That person was a realignment individual. After that talk, the manager of the facility came up and showed me this beautiful girl's picture on his iPhone. It was his daughter. She was murdered 12 months ago by another realignment person, 18-year-old. She was murdered in South Bay. We have a pending crime wave coming. Just in Los Angeles County, we have 40 inmates who are now imprisoned, serving from 8 to 42 years in a county jail. County jails are like a motel. They are for those individuals who are going to serve 1 year or less for minor offenses, and those going through the judicial process. They are not a major hotel for a person that is going to be serving time from a few years to life. Our local neighborhoods cannot be our state penitentiaries. Of the 9,000 that have been released since October 1st have come out from state probation to county probation, over 7,000 have been rearrested. Nearly 800 have been deported for being illegally in the country. Our bed space in the county jail is going to be occupied by the end of this fiscal year by these individuals coming to our responsibility. And those who are supposed to be in county jails are serving 10 to 15% of their time, and that number will go down, decrease. You're not going to have people invest in this state if you have criminals running wild. That is what is going to happen. You need to have safe streets to have investment and jobs. You need to have schools that teach and not become babysitting institutions. We need to reform our educational system so we are training our students to be the future leaders of tomorrow. Thirdly, we had a proposition on transportation that was defeated successfully this past week. We need to have a transportation proposal that does what every other municipality in the United States has done and is doing. We need to have rail connections to all of our airports. We are the only region that does not have rail connections to our airports. I'm talking about to LAX, Long Beach, Ontario, Bob Hope, Palmdale. We want to be able to have people move in and out of our counties via airports when they can. And one of the great projects that we have the 6 counties that make up MetroLink. We have $1 billion to upgrade the MetroLink system with double tracking, straightening the lines, grade crossings being changed. We are going to start in LA County this coming year, which is next month, on doing this. So you go from Palmdale to San Diego in 2.5 hours. You go from LAX, I should say from Union Station to San Diego in 90 minutes. Every county is taking part in that and receiving those funds, except Orange County. If they don't want to participate, that's better for the other counties. That means more money for us to upgrade our system. But we want to have a seamless system from San Diego to the Antelope Valley. And with the X Express, which is a line from Victorville to Las Vegas, so you can go to Victorville to Las Vegas in 90 minutes, we are working with them to have an alignment from Victorville to Palmdale Airport so you have a connection. And with the high-speed rail, we will work with them. If they're able to develop their somewhere to nowhere project in the coming years, on budget or below budget and on time, then we will have a connection being built from Baker's Kern County to Palmdale. So you would have a regional transportation system from Central California all the way down to San Diego County, and from Las Vegas going through the Antelope Valley to Central California or to San Diego. So those are some of the projects that we're working on. But you need to have taxes that are competitive, not excessive, regulations that are reasonable and not excessive, and safe streets and good schools to attract the capital and retain the jobs, so we are no longer the state that has an exodus of jobs and an exodus of the producers in the United States.
Supervisor Antonovich, let me ask you, while we have the chance here with all the discussion going on in Washington on the fiscal cliff issue, you're obviously watching this very closely, as we all are at this point. What impact and you expect the fiscal cliff issue to have here in Los Angeles County, and what's your expectation on how this fiscal cliff battle is going to play out and the impact here in Los Angeles County?
Los Angeles County's Board of Supervisors has a diverse philosophical makeup. But we have done what Washington and Sacramento has not done on unanimous vote. We reformed civil service rules and regulations. The unions opposed it, but the board realized we need to have accountability, and you need to get rid of those who create a problem, which also enhances the morale in the workplace when you do get rid of the losers. Unanimous approval. We have two commissions, and one which we helped initiate. Our Productivity Commission has saved nearly $4 billion since 1981 in enhanced productivity. We also have an Economy Efficiency Commission that has saved hundreds of millions of dollars by consolidating departments. So through fiscal prudent leadership, we've always kept a reserve. We've had no salary increases for our employees for the past 4 years. We have labor peace. We've worked with our labor organizations. We've been able to make the tough cuts, have a prudent reserve to meet the challenges. We're not going to always make that challenge if we continue to have realignment doing what it is doing and the other problems with high taxes driving businesses out of our country. But if Washington doesn't get their act together, there is nobody in a reasonable world, except out of an asylum, can run an economy by borrowing money from yourself. If you are already bankrupt, printing more money to borrow from to pay your bills will not provide a healthy dollar and a sound economy. We need to make the cuts and make the consolidations. Just in Sacramento, you could consolidate the Board of Equalization and the Franchise Tax Board to save hundreds of millions of dollars. You could issue vehicle registration every 2 years instead of every year to save those dollars. You could consolidate alcohol abuse, drug abuse into one agency. A lot of consolidations could take place to save dollars, and the same goes in Washington. When you have 20 or 30 departments funneling money into one agency, perhaps you should only have one department funneling money into those programs and not 20 or more. So Washington needs to have some fiscal structural reforms, just as they do in Sacramento, as every homeowner, every family has been doing with their diminishing resources that they have to feed their family, or an employer to feed and operate his or her business.
Supervisor Antonovich, thank you very much for your additional comments on the fiscal cliff, and we can certainly open the floor to a discussion about that and the uncertainty and the expectation on how this is all going to play out. While we have the chance, let's call on Rich Bachland now with the Federal Highway Administration West Coast Director of that agency. Rich Bachland.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of Federal Highway Administration. I will go ahead and say on behalf of USDOT, because we feel that the work that we do along with our partners at Federal Transit Administration and Federal Railroad are all working towards contributing to enhancing the infrastructure of California. Just wanted to bring up a couple of points in our discussions. Our administrator, Victor Mendez, when he goes around the country, has talked in great detail about, from our agency perspective, we see that when we're out there, delivering projects, working with you all, our partners at Caltrans, the local agencies, SCAG, and the MPOs, we really see this as jobs as much as improving transportation. That these jobs filter down to enhancing the quality of life for families, for the industry, for the economic competitiveness of our country. Within California, we see freight as a very important issue. Imperial County has talked about the competitiveness at the border. We're working closely with both SCAG and SANDAG on those initiatives. We're very pleased with the recent passage of MAP 21. And when we were going through the recession, we had the opportunity of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act here in California that brought millions of dollars to the local economy and jobs. And that was part of our partnership working with you all. In terms of moving forward, one of the programs that Federal Highways is advancing is a program called Everyday Counts. This is a program that looks at opportunities for streamlining federal processes, working in partnership. And I'd like to point out two of the very specific programs that we see as very pertinent for California. One is programmatic agreements. When we look at the environmental process, are there opportunities, especially for categorical exclusions, environmental assessments? Are there opportunities for streamlining those? We're working in partnership with Caltrans and along with NEPA assignment here. Another is the local agreement process, working with the counties and the cities. A lot of federal money passes on down through Caltrans to these entities. Our staff are working very closely to find opportunities to streamline these agreements so that we can save time and get projects and infrastructure built faster. Just wanted to also talk about, from USDOT's perspective, Federal Railroad Administration. We're very supportive of the work that's going on with high-speed rail. There are a lot of economic opportunities that may come out of this project, and our FRA folks are working very closely with the High-Speed Rail Commission. And here locally, Federal Transit Administration is working very closely with LA Metro and the transit operators as initiatives such as America Fast Forward and Breaking Down Barriers move forward. Very pleased to be here, and we look forward to further discussions as part of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presence here today. I'd like to talk about the fiscal cliff, and among the business groups preparing for whatever happens, the Los Angeles County Economic Development Corporation. Please welcome back the President and CEO of the LAEDC, Bill Allen.
I just wanted to add that Supervisor Antonovich's deputy, Norm Hickling, is co-chairing an effort called the LA Jobs Defense Council. And if you visit lajobsdefensecouncil.com, you'll find the work of a large regional collaboration, again, of business, government, labor, education, and other leaders. George Burden from the United Auto Workers and Norm Hickling from Supervisor Antonovich's office co-chair this effort. And they've amassed a significant amount of information about the impact of the fiscal cliff, of sequestration, both defense-related and non-defense related, and it is enormous. It is billions of dollars. It is hundreds of thousands of jobs. It would set back our recovery dramatically. It would increase our unemployment rate dramatically. So the effects on our region are profound. This Defense Council has been writing a number of letters to the Gang of Eight in Washington and to other leaders to really encourage, again, the sense of urgency we've been talking about today in addressing this problem. We're already seeing the jobs lost in significant defense company programs because of the uncertainty that the fiscal cliff and sequestration represent. So please do visit that LA Council, LA Jobs Defense Council. .com site, and you'll find information I think will be quite relevant to your cities. And one more time, I just wanted to recognize Chairman Knight from the Southern California Leadership Council and President Becerra from SCAG for making this forum possible for us today. It's that kind of leadership that is going to get us to the goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'd like to open it up to questions from the floor or comments from the floor. We have obviously a lot of leadership firepower here in the room. Does anybody else like to say anything from the SCAG Regional Council? Yes, please. The Honorable Keith Millhouse.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Hassan. I was visiting as I was listening to the speakers with my colleague here, and the symbolism of the room was noted upon us. We noted that the enlightened people were seated from Sacramento in the enlightened section of the room, whereas the business leaders and the economists were in the dark. And I think we got that reversed. I wanted to thank Representative Wagner, who I noticed was here for almost all the session. Yep, he's right over there. I wish we had more leaders like you in Sacramento that want to hear what's going on and want to help us. And I think it's going to be critical for us. We've had this for 3 years now. We've got some legislation passed with respect to the film credits, but it's apparent that Sacramento doesn't listen. They're not the enlightened people, and we're going to have to draft specific legislation that the business leaders, the transportation leaders come up with and stick it under their nose. There are people in Sacramento that listen. In Ventura County, we had a forum recently on transit, as Mr. Kettle mentioned. We're trying to get a sales tax measure passed, but we can't do it at 66%, and I understand that Senator Carol Liu has introduced some legislation to lower the threshold to 55% for voter approval, and I'm hoping that everyone will get behind that. And I know Senator Fran Pavley of our area has been very supportive. So there are people that are up there. I think it's time we empower them, encourage them, and let our voice be heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to call on Gerald George now, the city manager of the city of Duarte. Join me now in welcoming Paula Lance, Regional Council SCAG member from the city of Pomona.
Two comments. One goes to Mr. Devereaux's comments about Sacramento not getting it and we're not being forceful enough, and Mr. Wright emphasized that. And I guess my point is, if you don't control the money, they don't listen. And so I think that really needs to be considered, because I know most of us in the room talked to our representatives in both the Senate and the Assembly, particularly regarding redevelopment, and it didn't matter because the forces that control their re-election told them how to vote, and for the most part, that's the way they voted. The second comment I have is, many of you in Los Angeles County probably received your potential tax increase as a result of the stormwater runoff tax that LA County is looking to pass. What you may not know is that your cities have also received stacks and stacks of those potential bills, because your park land, your water department land, your city yards, and those of the school districts are also receiving these bills. For our city, it's going to amount to about $500,000, and that money can't come out of the money that we get distributed to us from that tax. It will come out of whatever department, which is primarily the general fund, and another hit on our budgets. So everybody here needs to be aware of that if you live in LA County. This is a big hit for city budgets, and another issue for making it business friendly, because your businesses are getting it also.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the floor on accelerating economic growth here in Southern California? I'd like to turn the podium back over now to Glenn Becerra, President of SCAG, to discuss the next steps and how we're going to be measuring progress on the recommendations presented today. Thank you.
Okay, and I just want to give Frank a big round of applause for his help today. He's made this it's an excellent forum today. And before I get into the next steps, I'd also like to ask my co-chair here, Jesse, if he'd like to make some closing comments as well before I jump into mine. So, Jesse, if you'd like to, please.
Again, it was an honor to be a part of this, and as I listened to a lot of the comments, I guess there were some observations I guess I would like to just put on the table for consideration by the body. You can't help but be taken by the leadership that's here in this room, and obviously all the great initiatives and efforts that are going on in this region, and that's the strength of the power in this room. But that's also representative of the weakness we have in this room, because I guess one of the first observations I would have is that obviously all of us in what we're trying to achieve in promoting economic development, there are scores of people trying to impede the progress that each one of us individually are doing, and through the collective effort of SCAG and the Southern California Leadership Council and other organizations, we try to solidify our effort to make change. So for the people and the organizations that try to impede our progress, I would submit that the number one focus to think about moving forward is a governance structure on how we be able to, that we can exert power. Because at the end of the day in politics, it's about power. And we heard people lament the fact that redevelopment money was taken away and not being able to influence what happened in Sacramento. I would suggest that we all think about what can we do incrementally to make sure that we can exert power. The second, a comment about the 7-year tax that we have got, and our state controller said that, made the statement that I think went by us, that I think is very important, that after the 7 years of this tax increase, we have another decision to make. And that is, what's the pledge on going forward? And that at the end of that time frame, we should be competitive. And if we've not, we've wasted more money, more tax money. Now, unfortunately, I think history says that once a government puts a proposal in for taxes, that it never ends. And I guess we'll be able to have that test and be able to answer that question in 7 years. So I would again submit for the body to think about what's longer term, what do we have in place, that we need a milestone to make a measurement on what we do for that next period of time, or do we increase even more taxes going into our coffers that will be non-productive. I thought it was a very interesting observation to hear that of the 719,000 small businesses, when you think about that pool of talent and for the state, and only 27,000 new net jobs were created. My translation of that is that it shows that small business is really, really suffering. And then secondly, it would suggest to me that innovation has certainly suffered. We talk about the innovativeness of California and what we have done here in Southern California, and if we've only produced 27,000 net new jobs, what does that suggest on where we're going for innovation? And I would suggest we all think about that moving forward. Another observation I would suggest that struck me is on Prop 39, which I didn't know the full ramifications of what that meant for the corporate tax apportionment methodology. But if Rod Wright is correct that in the last 90 days, 5 corporations have left, it would suggest that it's going to be a challenge for us moving forward. And additionally to that, in my own company, where we're spending about $11 billion in terms of infrastructure development in our region in electrical and energy transmission, and I look at the changes that can take place, those 5 it's more than just those 5 corporations leaving the state. You also have to look at that supply chain going into those 5 corporations. And that supply chain represents what? Small businesses that contribute to not building jobs. So the impacts of this is not just the normal nomenclature of a company leaving. The translation is there is a concomitant and domino effect that I think translates through our system that we all need to take in consideration. It's not just about big businesses leaving, it's the impact on our small business communities. Thirdly, I would say Rod Wright, he's brilliant. There's no question about it. The elimination of regulation, I wish I had heard him give this speech when I was talking to our lobbyists about what we do to support things in the state. But there is no question the call to action on trying to lower regulation. Before he left, he whispered to me that there are 125,000 people in Sacramento that have the power to implement regulations. 125,000 people in all of these agencies. And when you think about what that means for all of us and what we do, that is a formidable force for us to try to get under control. We lament the fact that we have 865,000 unemployed. Well, again, we always focus on that very traditional number, but we never speak to the fact of how many people don't get counted who are underemployed and those who aren't looking for work anymore. So let's not take and rejoice too much that there's a recovery going on. My guess is that we're still on the precipice. The winds are blowing more positive, yes, but let's not delude ourselves in terms of really what change is happening in our economy, and we have to push forward even more aggressively. And then lastly, I guess I would suggest in what I've heard today that we focus on industry clusters, and that's the way each of us focus on where our core strengths are for change. But listening to all the comments around the room, I would argue and suggest that there are many things that we can do to help improve business in general. And again, business in general for small business particularly. And the disparity that we look at between the Bay Area and here for our young people who are not getting BA degrees, again, it's a statistic that we lament, but if you look at the domino effect of what that's going to be, certainly that's going to do what? But be nothing but a translation to even a larger growing bubble of potential unemployment, because where are those kids going to work with the kind of economy that our region is developing? So those are observations that I had for the day. I think it's fantastic to hear what's going on around this region and what we're doing to try to change things, but it sure highlights the fact we have a lot farther to go.
Jesse, thank you. I'd like to ask Dr. Wallenrod to come up for one more minute. He had a couple of things he wanted to share with us as we wind down today's proceedings.
Thank you very much. Thank you, President Becerra. I just wanted to take a moment before we left today to thank my team members on the SCAG team. I think Christine, Michael, Bill, and John in his absence have done an excellent job, and we've developed a great team that can answer the questions that you guys are asking us to answer. And then finally, I did want to thank Hassan, his team, Sharon, Darren. These are really innovative things that we're looking at, and I think we're out in front of any other transportation agency in the country when we look at these things and talk about the benefits of project acceleration. I don't know anybody else who's marrying transportation planning with the economy like Hassan and his team, and I really want to thank Darren Chidsey, because the hours he spent working with our team and putting the materials together, I couldn't even go into how long those were. So I just wanted to say thanks at the end of the day for my team and for Hassan's team as well. So thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, and last but not least, except that I'm going to be fully last, is Hassan Akrada, our Executive Director.
Thank you, President Becerra. I want to thank President Becerra and the Regional Council, all of our business partners, the Southern California Leadership Council, all of you attending today. The President is going to talk about next steps, but I just want you to know that we're still committing to resources to move forward, to get us in the way to recovery. Today's session and the work of today's session could not have happened without one individual, and that is the Chief Deputy Executive Director, Sharon Neely. Sharon, raise your hands there. Sharon has a great team, Darren and Sylvia and others, but she has worked very hard to make this possible. I would like to thank all of our partner agencies who are here today, and I look forward to moving forward to the next major event in the desert, where we're going to talk about great things out of this conference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Hassan. A couple things as we wrap up today's gathering. And first of all, let me say thank you to all of you, again, who spent your day with us. We are going to be counting on you as we move forward to, really cement this partnership, because without us working together, none of the things that we're talking about, none of the plans we're putting together, the legislative package we're, creating, none of it will be successful unless we work together on this. I want to thank our regional council for all your support in helping us put these events together to support this direction that we've undertaken, because again, without your leadership both here on the regional level and at your local level, none of this would be possible as well. Frank shared with me some information that's coming out that will probably get reported formally tomorrow, but according to the Bloomberg Survey of Economists, it looks like the monthly job creation is only going to be about 86,000 jobs. That's down from 171,000 jobs in October, and the unemployment rate looks like it's going to stay at about 7.9%. That is not good news, and only really cements the reasons that we're here today. Is there's a lot of work that's got to be done. When I was up in Sacramento a couple weeks ago, I stayed at the Citizen Hotel. I don't know if any of you have stayed there. It's a pretty nice little boutique motel, and around it has a lot of memorabilia of politics that have gone on in California over the years. And inside the elevators, there's some pretty interesting quotes. And I know Comptroller Chung had brought up Ronald Reagan, and so, being a Democrat, I feel free as a Republican to go ahead and tap into him one more time, because I thought it was really interesting and really apropos to the conversation that we've had. On the wall of this elevator, it said Governor Reagan had said, government's view of the economy could be summed up in a few short phrases. If it moves, tax it. If it keeps moving, regulate it. And if it stops moving, subsidize it. I think that, all joking aside, no one has done that better than California. And that's really, like Jesse said, we need to look at a good structure for taxes, a fair structure for taxes. How we regulate business so that we not stifle it is incredibly important, and allowing our economy to be freed to grow. And then, as far as, subsidizing, we've got a lot of projects, and I know we talked about that too. A lot of programs, I think Supervisor Antonovich talked about, where we have duplication of effort. And some of that duplication is duplicating bad programs that aren't, efficient and functional. And so we're not just compounding the problem once, but multiple times. There are some good things that government does. We all agree with that. There is a necessary function for government. But if it's not evaluated, if we don't see what the benefits are and that they're cost effective, why are we doing them? And it shouldn't be because somebody passed a law and said we should. It should be because it's the right thing to do here in California. So Jesse outlined some of the important areas that we're going to target as we move forward, and we're going to be looking at regulation reform, tax structure reform, rule changes on being able to expedite projects. All of those things that we're going to need to do to make our state more competitive. I want to thank our labor partners that have showed up, our industry partners, our government partners, all of our stakeholders that have showed up today, because, again, the power that is in this room, and Jesse talked about political power, the power that is in this room by us working collectively. And I think what I've heard over and over again is that all of those different groups, labor and business and government, we all agree that on the things that need to be fixed. We had some great legislative leaders show up today, and I want to thank them for taking time out of their day and being with us as well. I joked with Sharon, that I had a goal of, getting 100% more legislators here this time than we had last time. And that means we needed 2 because we only had 1 the last time. Well, we had at least 3 plus the controller, so I'll count the controller a couple of times since he's a statewide officer. So we did better than we did before. But they should have all been here. Now, I know that there's new member orientation, so a lot of the people that are newly elected get a pass from me because they had to be up in Sacramento. We didn't know that. That wasn't scheduled when we went and scheduled this event. But this is just the beginning, again, of the efforts that we're going to have to make to be able to fix the problems that our region, that our state, that our towns are experiencing. We will be taking a delegation up to Sacramento with our SCAG leadership. We'll be, tapping into SCLC, the Southern California Leadership Council, in January to meet with legislative leaders, to meet with the governor's staff, the lieutenant governor, who's been a real champion of economic changes, and our local legislators. We're going to need you all, though, to help tap into those local legislators and remind them why it's important for your business, for your government, for your residents, your employees, for them to make these changes. We need more of the state legislators to sound and act like Rod Wright, because those are the things that have to be fixed if we want to truly, and again, I know it's a statement that probably gets overused, but to return California to the Golden State era that we had before, where we were the captains of innovation, where we grew a robust economy, where anything was possible. That's the future we all want for our kids. That's the future we all want for our employees today. That's the future we want for our communities. And, by ourselves, we can't do it. But if we pull everybody together, we can move some of these mountains, and they definitely are mountains and a great challenge for us, but we can do this. So I want to thank you all on behalf of the Regional Council and the Southern California Association of Governments and the Southern California Leadership Council for all of our intellectual and economic development firepower that we brought today, our local electeds, the labor leaders, and the business leaders, and all of you in the audience today for joining us. But again, we will be tapping into you to help put the pressure, the political power that Jesse spoke of, on these legislators so that they can have the strength of your support to do the right thing. We all think doing the right thing is an easy thing to do, but unfortunately it's not. And so we need to be the backstop to these legislators, the pressure point to these legislators to do the right thing on behalf of our local economies and our local communities, our businesses, and our employees. So again, on behalf of everybody, again, Frank, thank you, Hassan, and the staff at SCAG, our regional council, and on all of you who joined us today, thank you. We look forward to seeing you down in the desert in May, where I'll be able to pass the baton off to President Pettis, and all the work that we're going to accomplish between now and then we'll do with your help. So again, thank you, and pardon? Yeah, happy holidays, and I think we're letting you out a few minutes early, so that's efficient government for you. So thank you.